I wasn't able to get 100% out of me and the bike. It's my fault, but there was probably 3 or 4 days on the bike that I felt as comfortable as I did on a Superbike. And we always say that, the bikes are at a high level, but, these guys don't have roll cages around them and they don't have seat belts. And when you look at the difference from Wayne Rainey on a 500 and Kevin Swantz in the early 90s, and everybody said it was so crazy fast, and now they're doing the speeds they're doing now, it's like, when's enough going to be enough?
Now, if you've been following the podcast recently, you would know that we're on a massive health kick as we get ready to take on World Vets at Glen Helen in November of 2023. Athletic Greens is not only an all-in-one formula that helps me just cover all my nutritional bases, it's also the first healthy habit that I have that starts every single day. AG1 is packed with 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients of the highest quality that are able to offer gut health support, mood support, can affect your energy each day, and contribute to overall healthier looking hair and skin. All right, just you want to pull that up a bit closer as well, and then you can kind of put it up and articulate it a bit. All right, Ben Spies is joining us on Gypsy Tales, and I am extremely excited for this one, mate. We met at the Alps party a few weeks ago, 60 years of Alpine Stars. You're a long-time Alpine Stars ambassador, and I don't know, we probably could have done a podcast right there and then. So the combo was flowing.
We had a good conversation. It was good.
But you've made the trip out to California. Obviously, it's like some big news. You've on a bit of a work trip, on a press tour as such. I'm excited to have you on the podcast, mate.
Awesome. So,
do we just start with the Moto America stuff? Kind of big news in your world, big news in Moto America world that you're a boss now. You're the boss man.
Yeah. Right now, kind of putting everything together. From the not the outside, but just kind of the top with the personnel and the riders and everything. So it's I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a really good thing. I got called by someone with Ducati and kind of asked me, would you think about managing a team? And I said no, like not be a manager, no. But I said I can wear 3 or 4 hats within the team and definitely do something. And then that turned into talking with Graham and Bobby, and getting stuff sorted out. And here we are. So we're putting together a 600 Super Sport team for next year, 2 riders. Aspirations obviously with everybody involved is to go Superbike in 2025. But we got to, do everything right, raise the money and sponsors and all that kind of stuff. But everything's sorted for next year, and the riders are close to being announced, and I'm stoked with that. I mean, it's kind of both of my first picks, for the ride. So it's looking forward to it. It's a lot of work. I've never been in that position before, but I know once we get to the track and testing, that's when, I can do a lot more and help with the team and do that stuff. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
That's cool, man. And so Moto America's been on a pretty big come up recently, really. For me, watching, like I said, Josh Herron, there's a couple dudes in it. I think the baggers kind of added a little bit of visibility to it as well. So it sort of seems like it's kind of on the come up. And then I think having your name attached to a team now, it seems like it's trending.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like that, and I hope with the Ray Halls coming in and me being attached to it, it can draw other sponsors and other teams in. So, but yeah, definitely the last kind of 3 years, there's been an uptick, in seeing the fans at the races and all that stuff. So this is, I think, the perfect time, for something like this to happen, and I look forward to, being back at the track again.
And the IndyCar guys, eh?
Yeah. Bobby Rahal, legend in Indy cars, and then Graham's the son. They're very business-minded, have a lot of stuff going on, and Graham has 2 Ducati stores, so made sense for him to do this, and he's always been a big, fan of racing. And
I think once you're a Ducati guy too, you're just a Ducati guy.
Yeah, and they're racers. They like to win, and when we started talking about it, and me being part of the team and trying to put the mechanics together that I want to go for, it starts to be a pretty cool project.
Man, I'm excited for you, like, especially kind of coming out of nowhere too. Like, it's not like, I mean, you're living on a ranch in Texas, you got horses, and you got 2 daughters, and, so it's like you kind of were just cruising, doing your thing. But I bet, I guess sometimes in life you get a kind of cool opportunity and see where it goes. Yeah,
there hadn't been too many opportunities in the States. There would have been a couple in Europe, but for me, flying is not my favorite thing to do. So it'd be a lot of flying for the work. And if I lived in Europe, it could happen, but obviously don't. So, just kind of been the last 10 years, been retired and raising the girls and working out on my land, getting it kind of fixed up. We're building a house out there. And then this call came and, I sat down with my wife and I'm like, what do you think about it? And she was like, you're 39. And she's like, now you got the land all fixed up nice. You're going to have a lot more spare time again. She's like, do it, And like I said, it's a perfect role for me. In the beginning, it's going to be a lot of work, getting everything ready and getting the manager in position and all that stuff. And then once that's sorted, it'll get a little easier. Yeah. But I think it's, like I said, it's going to be a lot of work till Daytona in March. And then once we start getting to the track and racing, I hope everything gets a lot more, normalized and stuff like that.
How many rounds do the Moto America guys do?
So there's 10 total, including Daytona. So yeah, we're kind of, it's pretty much the same tracks that I think 1 or 2 are a little different, but pretty much the same tracks I grew up racing and raced on in the AMA days.
So what's the difference between the AMA stuff that you cut your teeth on to the Moto America stuff now?
It's pretty similar.
Is it kind of the equivalent?
It's kind of the same. Yeah. So it's like the Superbike class in Moto America. That's basically what I did, back in the 2005 to 8 days. And the spec of bike is really close to World Superbike. Yep. So yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, nice. And I feel like doing it from Texas is probably like a pretty good way to do it too. You're sort of like in the middle, and because I think the travel is, I'm thinking moto, like that's 31 races, so 10's not as bad, but I guess you add in the testing and all that sort of stuff as well. But at least you're kind of central for the travel.
The longest flight I think I have is like 3.5 hours, and that's one really. That's so mostly kind of a couple hour flights. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of flying and traveling, but the way it was in Europe, it got you used to something so crazy and so many flying hours. And with this, it's like, it's not that bad. I mean,
were you going private back then? Like, was that a thing?
A couple private flights in Europe, to a couple tracks that were hard to get to, or it was a long 3-hour drive from the airport. Yeah. But no, mainly it's just kind of the nice business stuff and the good airlines. And I mean, it was a way to travel. It was nice, but in the same time, when you're training as much as you're doing, you're traveling as much as you are, the plane rides, it's like you're trying to recover, trying to sleep. I was never comfortable in planes, so it made it tough. And I think we kept our ticket stubs from 1 year, and I think we came up with, we flew 550 hours a year, and that's basically a month in the plane without airport time, all the layovers. So it'll wear on you.
I don't think people understand the grind in that way, like just what you get used to when you do the MotoGP circuit or the F1 circuit. I mean, the motocross and supercross in the US is gnarly, but dude, and then like the visa stress, like, I mean, half the paddock couldn't even get visas for India, I heard, and it is just an absolute beast of a schedule that you have to do to be at that level.
And that's what a lot of people, when I talk to them, they're like, oh, you get to travel the world and see all these places and all this kind of stuff, which you do. I mean, you get to see a lot of stuff, but most of the time, you're flying in on a Wednesday, jet lagged of some sort, at least half the races, obviously, in the schedule you are. And then Thursday, it's team meetings, it's media stuff. Friday practice, Saturday qualifying racing, Sunday racing, and then you fly out Monday. So it's bang, bang, bang. And, you know, you're, like I said, the whole jet lag with training and just everything. I mean, you're always kind of recovering.
And you're never in a tourist headspace either.
No.
I'm
not
so zoned in.
Yeah, it's not, you know, now it's like I love thinking back in some of the places, and I'm going to a lot of the places again with the family or vacationing. But, you know, for me, I was like ultimate tunnel vision about racing. So, we're flying in Wednesday to go do this and go see this. I'm like, I'm flying in Wednesday and I'm going to the house to rest, you know. So I was kind of, you know, wouldn't say bad about that, but that's what my focus was. Yeah. So it's, like I said, I would never take it back, and a lot of people won't, you know, that's in that position. But it is a bit more work, you know, than people think, especially the F1 guys and the GP schedule. I mean, it's a gnarly travel schedule.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where you don't know how you react to it until you're kind of in it, you know.
Well, and I say it again, I was so scared of flying in America that, you know, when I lived in Texas and we had a 2-day test at Laguna Seca, I would drive.
You're scared of flying?
I know, I'm weird. Trust me, I wish that I wasn't, but it's just from a young age and a control thing, you know, and I don't like being over the ocean for a long time, and that happens a lot, you know, and they pull back the throttle. I'm kind of like, hey dude, don't do that. You know, I can't stand it. But you know, the reason I went over there was because basically the economy in 2008 when it crashed, you know, so I'm riding in the middle of the year, and the Suzuki president calls me and he said, you know, if you want to continue making good money where you can retire at a decent age and be okay with everything, you have to go to Europe. You got to do it. And this was before we even started talking about the next years or anything. And he just gave me a warning, basically, you know. So I contacted a couple teams, and the Yamaha World Superbike thing, you know, happened, and that's what it was. That's why I went over there, basically, because it was, you know, I wasn't going to be able to make the money that I was making in the States. And I know that racing, you get to, you know, 35 kind of max. You know, you've got a window, and I had to make good money and do it. And I had fun, but I had some shots earlier to go to Europe, and I didn't really jump on them because I had a pretty good life. I mean, it was a bus in America with my dog, and just drove everywhere. I didn't have to get on a plane. I could take my time. I had my bicycles with me. I could train, all that kind of stuff. And then the economy got, you know, smoked everything down in America, and it was like, you got to go do something. So, you know, I always said that it wouldn't stop me, and it didn't, you know, but it made it difficult for sure.
Man, that's crazy to think. I mean, it makes total sense now.
I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous when you're riding 200 and you're doing all the stuff, but just, you know, riding in planes and going back to that, flying private when I can see what's going on.
Yeah, you're sweet.
I'm fine. Yeah. But, you know, when I'm sitting back there and, like I said, they pull the throttle back and you're over the Atlantic in the middle of it, it's like, no, dude, don't, just keep it right there. You can, you know, that sound would mess me up. So I didn't get to rest a lot on the planes like I would see other people sleeping, and, you know, I would say,
bro, I'm out.
Oh no,
I'm done.
No.
As soon as I'm on that plane, fucking sayonara.
No, I'm like gripping things like on takeoff.
Way.
Oh yeah.
That's insane.
So that's again what some people, they kind of know it, but they probably don't understand that it messed with me that bad. And I feel like a puss, but it's just,
no. I mean, everyone's got
the way thing. It is.
Like, but isn't it insane to think of just how much shit could kill you every single day that you're alive? Like, every time you get, we drove back from
but at least, like, I feel like I have some control
over other stuff.
Yeah. When I'm in the plane, I've always kind of looked at it like, you know, when I get in those positions,
you just sign your life over.
I want somebody to, like, really well qualified, you know, like somebody on a dirt bike or me on like somebody that really knows what they're doing. And I look at the numbers and I see how many pilots are out there. And it's like, you know, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of normal, people that have, and they know what they're doing, but do they know when something happens that they can do this? And that's what I don't know. And it just wears me out.
Dude, there's a guy that I've been getting to drive me to LAX, like when I have to travel. I'm not parking and dealing with that shit. So I've got this dude that drives me. He probably won't drive me again because he's a bit of a fucking weirdo. But so anyway, we're in the car, and he's done like 5 or 6 trips with me, like since I got here. And then my wife came over. She gets in the car and she's like, "This fucking dude's not alright. Like, I'm not comfortable. Like, this isn't cool." And So anyway, we got to LAX and we're just sort of having a coffee, laughing about it. And she's like, I wonder what he did before he did this, you know? And I was like, oh, funny story. He was actually a fucking a private airline pilot, worked for NetJets. And
see, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I'm like, you cannot drive a shopping cart. And he reckons he worked for NetJets for like 20 years.
See,
I'm like, bro,
that story right there, that's why I'm scared of flying.
Yeah, I've never thought about it until I met that guy, and I was like, dude, who is this guy? Like, he's full blown. Like, we were driving in the carpool lane, and he's just like, he's just twitching. Like, he's just twitching. And I'm thinking, like, is this dude about to have a seizure? Like, so can you imagine that guy being your bloody NetJet pilot? Oh, so you're right.
Well, that's just the way I've always looked at it. But you know, in the end, we made it happen. I did it. You know, was living in Europe, you know, for quite a bit, and some great memories for sure.
Well, I was talking to Casey actually before you come on, and I was like, oh, what's like something cool you think that were like a good topic for Ben, you know, like on the inside? Don't ask him. But he made a really good point, and as he always does, he's a fucking genius in life in general. But yeah, he said, ask Ben what it takes to go all in, you know, and why. Because I think, like, we've seen Nicky win a MotoGP title, and then you've obviously had success, like a lot of success on a super high level, but there's not that many Americans on that world stage that have made that kind of impact, you know. And I think that there's, you know, when you play it off for Australia, though, you've got Jack Miller, Casey Stoner, Mick Doohan, like, keep going. You know, there's a list of guys, and it's like, in Australia, you kind of don't have the choice to go back and forward. It's so far from Europe. It's not like America where you can have a shit weekend and you're like, all right, I'm going home. You know, you were one of the guys, and this is what Casey said, like, you were one of the guys that went fully all in. Like, once you went to Europe, like, you went to Europe. You were there. There was no 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I can go back home.
Well, I mean, to be frank, the main reason for that was it was less flying. So I based myself, you know, I was in Lake Como, which of all places, it was really awesome. Beautiful, you know, and I did a lot of cycling and rode with a lot of the pro cyclists that live like right in that area. So that was good. And I had my two mechanics I brought from America with me, and we had a house together. I rented a house, and so I had that circle. And again, it was mainly being over there was so I wasn't flying as much. So yeah, that was, like I said, it was a completely, I didn't see that happening, you know, even when I started winning in Superbike. Like, I thought I was going to stay in AMA forever. But when the choice came, we did it. And I just kind of, that was the reason for getting over there, was just less flying and you know, more training time and more rest.
And did you feel like you kind of had to make that all-in approach to kind of make it work? Because I spoke to Chad on the podcast years ago, and it was sort of one of the things, like, it hit me like a ton of bricks when he said it, because he said the exact same thing. Because I kind of was like, man, it really seemed like you didn't really care about Australia that much, like, when you left, you know. And I think Aussie fans really got that impression from him. And he said that, dude, I had to. Like, I missed home every day, but you have to put it out of your mind. You have to completely cut it off. You can't be half in, half out. I miss my friends. I miss my family. You just got to go all in. Like, can you resonate? Like, does that resonate with you?
Yeah. I mean, because I was homesick too. Not enough where it, you know, was bad or anything, but it was, you know, it was tough because I was that type of person that was like, I had my bus, and I'm a homebody type person, and then all of a sudden you know, get immersed into Italy, and at that time we were doing pretty well, and you know, just walking on the streets in Italy or something like that, you know, you'd kind of pass somebody, and as soon as they pass you going the other way, you hear, that was Ben Spies, you know. And it was a different thing. It was awesome, you know, but in the same time, I wasn't, I rather people not notice me than notice me when I'm just doing normal stuff. You know, I don't like I respect it, and obviously love the fans that I have, but I'm not the one that's trying to build that fan base. I'm just trying to do the best I can on the track, and the people that like it and support, you know, how I ride, well, it's awesome, you know, and I love the fans, but I wasn't that person to put on the show, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's that's a fine line between like every sport is an entertainment product as well as it is a sport. And you know, you see the guys like the Valentinos and the you know, like
I mean, Valentino, Nicky, you know, they were good at it. They liked it. I mean, it wasn't something that was fake. You know, it wasn't something that, like, for me, if I was going to act like Nicky or them, that's fake.
Yeah.
And Casey was kind of the same way. Not comparing me to Casey, but you know, he didn't need, you know, the attention, and I didn't either. And not saying that that's bad or good. It's just that's kind of the way it is. Yeah, and you know, I think too, it's you know, because my wife's an extrovert, I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
The one thing I got to always argue is kind of like, I understand, you know, your point of view, and I'm glad that you're like that and all that stuff. But you know, you've got to understand that it's not like we're wrong. We're just different, you know. And a lot of extroverts, it doesn't seem like they can understand why introverts are like that, you know. So, but that's me, you know, my whole life. I mean, when I was in front of people in a classroom or even accepting awards, when I was at a pretty big level, you know, and I start talking in front of a big group of people. It's like voice is a little shaky. I'm like getting analyzed like here, you know, that was me.
Yeah. It's funny. My wife, I'd say I'm probably more of an extrovert. She's the exact opposite. And it's funny the lack of awareness that I had because I've never really been in a relationship or like with an introverted person in that sense. And like my family is very extroverted and like that was the world I knew.
Yeah.
And you know, the level of social awareness I think I learned by being with her, like, oh, it is way different for a lot of people. Like she says like a social battery. So she goes, we'll be at a place, at a party, at an event, and she goes, hey, my battery's on 0, I'm out. And I'm like, sweet, you know. And I used to take take offense to it in a sense, like, what, you're not having fun? Am I not fun? Am I not cool? You know? And it's just, that's just not how it works. And then, you know, it should be like, oh yeah, I just get to the point where I'm out. I've got nothing left to give to any of these people. I need to just go be by myself. And then I've started noticing in myself, I'm like, I can do that. Like I can get to that. I get to that point, but I just push through and you know. So I think it's actually kind of cool when you can have an understanding of a different person's experience, and then kind of you can almost put it back to yourself like, okay, I can see that. Yeah,
and even my daughters, you know, they kind of see it too because they're extroverts. They would be, and one of them's kind of a little bit more introvert, but one's not totally.
Yeah,
and it's like we go to a public park or something, and there's say 50 people. She's walking down the hill and she just yells out loud, like, I'm Lila, who wants to play? This is my dad right here. And I'm like, okay, you know, and she's just like, she looks back and she knows I'm kind of not, I don't like that type of stuff, but she's old enough where she kind of pokes fun at me too. And I'm like, come on, you're 7, like, stop.
That's so good.
But it's funny.
It'd be a trip to see the way that your kids develop a personality and seeing things that you seeing things that are your wife.
We got, like I said, I got 2 wild girls. They've got Italian blood in them, so they're full on, and they're totally different, you know, but they're similar obviously too. So no, I'm excited, you know, just to watch that grow up. It's been fun.
Oh man, I can't even imagine. Yeah. You said before about you know, you didn't ever have the vision of going and, you know, doing the Europe thing, and that's so American in a sense. Like 50% of Americans don't own a passport, and I think it's like 14% of Americans have never left the state they were born in.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, because all the stuff, like all the tapes I watched when I was a kid, you know, was Wayne Rainey, McDougall, Swanson, and you know, Rainey and Gardner, all those guys. So I mean, that's all I ever watched, and even the World Superbike type stuff with Bayliss and Courser back in the day, Fogarty, and so I was well aware, and that's everything I ever watched. But in the same time, you know, we had it pretty easy in America. You know, we had 10 rounds. Everybody, when I was racing in the AMA, they were getting paid pretty well.
What was ballpark back then? For like a top dude in like an AMA,
like 2006 to 2008, if you were doing well and winning, you know, it was basically between, you know, 1.8 and 2.5 mil, you know, base salary.
Good cash.
Yeah, and it's when you're doing that, and like I said, everything's just kind of like I had my motorhome, I had all my training stuff in it, I had my dogs. Me and my best friend, we traveled, did kind of everything together. It was just easy, and it wasn't just it was easy, but that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have all the records in America. I wanted to, stay in the series and do all that. But it was simply because of what the economy did to American racing and all the stuff that happened after that.
How long did it take for it to bounce back? Or has it ever got back to that level?
Not quite. It's like I said, it's coming back slowly, but it was, the economy, there was a few things that happened all at once, and it was the economy happened. I left, at the end of 2008, and then Matt, who had been racing obviously for those 4 years, they changed the rules a little bit for the bikes in 2009, and he wasn't having it. It was a super stock bike.
Would they go back? Like they went less factory, more production?
Yeah, basically. It's like Superbike. Like you've got a super sport bike, which is a bike with bolt-on parts, and then you've got a full-fledged Superbike.
Yeah.
They kind of went back to super stock rules, and he didn't like that at all. And then I had left, and we didn't have that rivalry anymore. So he retired at the end of 2009. And then after that, a couple of the factories, the Japanese factories, pulled out. And it all happened, yeah. So then, with what they've been given and what they have now, Moto America's doing an awesome job, but they still, we don't have the big Japanese brands as factory teams. They're supporting some riders, and I think that they, hopefully will get back into it. We need it, but it's still moving in the right direction. But that was a few things happened all at once, and then it changed a lot. And like I said, it's slowly coming back, but it's got a ways to go.
It's quite a unique series though, right? Because like they'll do Daytona, which there's nothing like that in the world. Like I think one of the cool things about the Moto America series is the way that it is quite different from, you can't compete with MotoGP, you can't compete with World Superbike, but you can create a different enough product that strikes interest with a global audience. And if you've got the right personalities and if it's presented in the right way. And I think these days, man, like, if you nail the media and if you nail the social media and if you build the personalities, then I really think that you can make any sport great.
Heron's a pretty good example, of the social media stuff. I mean, he's done a really good job the last few years, and it just shows. I mean, you can do some stuff. You just got to work at it. And
he works super hard at it too. He takes that like very, very seriously.
Yeah.
And, you see the results. And like, I mean, the first thing you do these days it's the first thing I do when I'm doing research on people, I just type somebody's name into YouTube. Like it's the second biggest search engine on planet Earth. Like you better be there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I know that he's got an amount of fans that aren't per se racing fans that he's brought, from the street
stuff that he does.
So there's, he's done a really good job with that. There's no doubt.
Have you seen some of his videos drifting those V2s and shit?
Dude, see, I don't ride on the street. Like I don't have a motorcycle license.
No way.
No. And I've actually, the most I've ever ridden on the street was just a HJC video shoot we did like 3 weeks ago or when I saw you at that party. So it's I'm just not a big street rider, never done it. And then you see people like that, and I've always told people this, that like the good street riders, if we go to like Mulholland Canyon or something like that,
they'll dust you, bro.
2 corners, I can't see them.
See ya.
But then it's like if we go to a track in 5 laps, we can lap some of those people. And you're just used to a different, I'm used to that tunnel where there's nothing that can happen besides what your bike or what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And it's just a different thing. And then, being at that level, I just kind of, if I go ride on the street, you're not able to push even 40%, so it's just not.
Some guys are.
It's gnarly.
Like
the bikes are fast. I mean, bro, they're real fast. I rode a Ducati, V4 in that deal, and I kind of told that we shut the roads down. We had cops, and I kind of went back to the cop and I said, "Hey, this was a flyby. Kind of, they were just still on the road, and I was getting right past them." And I was like, I'm going to let it go on this one. And I was like, I got up to like 170. I couldn't believe how fast the bike was. I was like, this bike makes as much horsepower as my Superbike did, 10 years ago. It's crazy. Yeah. 12 years ago.
Yeah, I remember when I was young, I left school I had like a couple like labour jobs, and then I was trying to get a job working for the Honda dealership in town, and I got this job, and I was doing sales, and I'd sell like Yamaha R1s and all like CBR 1000s and shit, and I was only 18 or 19, so I had like a 250 license. So the shop had this little NSR 250 two-stroke deal, and I used to have to, like, if I'm trying to sell a bike to someone, then you'd go on the test ride with them. So I'm on this little NSR two-stroke. Yeah. And the amount of people, like, that's what I learned real quick, where I was like, those bikes are not okay. Like, I couldn't ride one because legally I couldn't ride one yet. Yeah. And so I'm saying, like, hey, how much riding experience have you got? And you just get Joe Blows off the street that just did their learner course. They are following someone in a yellow.
And then let's buy a 200 horsepower bike.
Dude, and like the amount of guys I think I saw 3 dudes in the time. We were on this main Anderson Road in my town, Main Street, and then there was a roundabout. And you'd go left out of this. You'd go left out of the shop, and I'm there, blah, 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 the little two-stroke, and old mate would just gun it on the roundabout, just go, yeah. 3 dudes crashed on the roundabout, probably 400 yards from the shop, man. And like, I remember you'd have to, like, all the bikes would be out the front, and then you'd ride them around the block to put it back in. And like, I remember getting on an R1 one day, and I was in first gear doing 140 kilometers an hour. And I'm just like, what the fuck is wrong? This thing has 5 more gears.
No, it's like I said, it's one of those things that, you know, like if I was going to get a street bike or I'm riding, I'm getting, you know, something like a scrambler or a hypermotard bike that you can actually like twist it.
Have you rode a Ducati hypermotard?
Not yet. No, it's super fast.
They are so much fun.
Yeah, I rode a scrambler a lot in the chute, and that was a fun bike, you know, because it had the dual sport knobbies on it, you know, and I was riding on gravel, so I was kind of sliding it around. But it's a bike that you can actually hold it wide open for more than a second, and you're not going 190 miles an hour. Yeah. So that's the kind of bikes that I would ride if I was actually going to own a street bike and ride, or like a multi-strata, something.
Have you rode one of them?
Yeah, wicked.
Dude, that's one of the coolest bikes I think I've ever rode in my life.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And what you can do on that bike is, if you're a good rider, I mean, you can kind of go most places. Tight single track, it'll get a little bit tough, but, you know, normal single track or like the
just
Jeep.
fire road sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man. I was actually a Ducati ambassador in Australia for the last few years.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I had a hypermotard first, and then I had the Monster, the 1290, I think it is. Yeah. And then I had a multi-strata in and out. And I remember the guy, I thought the multi-strata was fucking lame. they're like, hey.
Then you ride it.
Yeah, this new adventure bike's coming in, and like go to the dealership. They've got one there. And so my dad, he's got Africa Twin, so he's like a big adventure bike guy. And so then my mate drops me off at the Ducati dealership, and old mate's, this thing's so sick, and I'm standing there just being like, bro, this is the lamest bike I've ever seen in my life. And then he's like, just do me a favor, bro.
Just ride it.
Just gun it onto the freeway when you leave. He's like, you'll be doing 170 Ks by the time you get merged onto the freeway. Yeah. And I could not believe it. Oh, yeah. I just sent the thing, but like adaptive cruise control, like just so much.
And the position of it too. I mean, it's beautiful. Just you're comfortable, you know. So, no, those are cool bikes. I'm actually, now that, you know, with the Ducati team, I'm going to try to get one of those so I can ride it out to the ranch from the house.
Well, and then, it'd be perfect for there. And then the hypermotard, that was the first bike that I had. I actually did a sick day. My first ever track day was with Troy Bayliss and Ollie Bayliss, and it was just us. We had like a little track rented out, and first time I'd ever put leathers on, and, you know, tried to get a knee down and all that shit. Yeah. And it was on that bike, and I loved that thing.
That's cool. Man, Bayliss was one of the only ones I didn't get to race. That's the one guy, you know, that, because I looked up to him and watched all his racing, and I was at a good level, you know, when I went into the 2009 season, and so I showed up to the last 2008 round because I was going to do the first test 2 days after, Tuesday, Wednesday.
So you did like a wild card type deal.
Well, no, I was just watching the race, and that was his last weekend. He won, and then he was retiring, and then I was starting to test the 2-3 days later. So, and then the 2009 season, obviously we won the title, and I know he's sitting at home because
he's wax this fool,
or it's at least like
I'm glad I'm not there.
Yeah, no, he's the type where he would have wanted to race. With I'm sure what he saw was happening. He was like, damn. And I was the same way. I was like, and I've messaged him and told him that I was bummed that he retired because I wanted to race him. And I got to race a lot of the people I looked up to, and he's Troy Bayliss, and we would have had some scraps. It would have been fun.
And he's, I think there's just that old school generation. Like there's such a.
When I grew up, like I said, I was the last few years before I was going there, I was racing against Matt, and it was like. That's gnarly. People that know. And he was fast, but it was also all the old school rivalry.
Just
like that's
competitive too.
Oh, dude.
So like Troy and his son Ollie.
Yeah.
Dude, Troy's in his 50s.
No, he's gnarly.
Ollie's a teenager, and they're just going for it on road bikes, flat track.
Yeah.
Like. Troy's at the Avales. They got the little 400s. Just every single day they're competing. And it's like, so you be around that for 25 minutes and you're like, oh, that's why you're Troy Bayliss. Like, you are just a complete psychopath.
Well, I mean, I've heard so many stories too, Ben Bostrom, that like them cycling together and just doing stuff and just all the different stories. And I mean, he is full tilt. In every way, but I like it. And like I said, his riding style, the way he did everything, but that's how he is off the track. That's what he is. And I mean, he's the dude, again, whatever age he is, if he jumps on a flat track bike, he ain't going slow.
Oh, no.
It's like Kenny Roberts Sr. when he jumped on that TZ at, the mile. It was like, wow, are you serious, dude? Like, you're not young anymore. Wow.
You don't bounce.
No.
But Mick Doohan's the same way, man. Like, he is just a savage motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, when you're at that level, at that high level, I mean, we were kind of talking about it earlier. There's a talent involved, yes, but I mean, you're doing things differently, and it's just from the research you're doing, the time you're putting in, the training, your mindset, whatever it is, it's got to be a little bit different, if you're able to, keep that high level and do that stuff. And I've always said that the greats kind of in every sport, they're doing stuff different, for sure.
What was the first thing in your life you applied that to? Like, was it just bikes? It was always bikes? Like, that's where you found it? Or is it the kind of thing, the saying, like, how you do anything is how you do everything. So is it just you're just that guy? You just came
it was just racing. Like, my mom and dad, they took me to a Supercross when I was like 3 years old. Yep. And I saw the little intermission 50 race. And I threw the biggest temper tantrum.
Because you weren't there.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on? And we had to leave the Supercross because I was just crying so much and wanted to be out there. So that was 3. And then, I started riding when I was 5. And then my mom's ex-boyfriend, that's who kind of got me into it. And he brought home some YSR 50s. And I was like 7. And I'm like, those things fit me better than they do you. And he was riding in parking lots, kind of doing his training. So I started doing it. I was wearing motocross gear with rollerblade knee pads.
That's so sick.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I was like starting to drag my knee with that. And then I started racing. And, at that age I was doing well, but you never know how you're going to be when you're 8, 9, 10 kind of thing.
There's a lot of life that happens.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing well and you're doing what it looks like should be going to that level, but a lot of stuff has to take place. And, I remember I was probably 14. And just to give you an example of how I thought about racing, I just broke my foot in like 4 or 5 places and went to school, was on crutches. And somebody had asked me, I was in math class or something, somebody asked me what had happened. And I basically just answered them. And the teacher, I don't know what I'd done to make him mad or before stuff, whatever, but I just remember he stood up and he was like, if motorcycle racing is more important than my math class, you can get the fuck out. And I
would have been like, see ya.
No, I said, all right. I said, peace out, dude. And I got my crutches, I got my bag, and I walked out. And I'd go home from school, and my mom was the type that when she picked me up, she was like, what do you get, kicked out for? And they said it, and she was like, okay, well, you want to go out to the shop to see your bikes, or like in front of them, so they know that she supports it. And then funny story, when I was 18 or 19, I had signed my first factory deal, bought an M3, an E46 M3, 2003. Yep. I was stoked. Everything's good, getting paid decent money at that age. And there was a breast cancer charity thing going on in an elementary school down the road. So I had a friend that the wife taught up there. So I went up there and I donated like $7,500 or something to it. And when I pulled up, I parked and the principal came out. Principal was my old math teacher. Yeah. And it was such a good, and he was laughing. I mean, he was just like, but this doesn't happen. I was like, I know, but I was like, what's up? How you doing? He's like, oh, I've been following you and watching you. It was cool. I mean, it was like a full circle thing, but back then it was one of those things where, if you think it's more important, I was like, well, I know it's more important. Yeah. So I'm out. So that was pretty fun.
That's so cool. Yeah. I think some people just I always gravitated to riding. It was just I know more now why, but it's that was just my escape from everything. Yeah. And I feel even now, especially we're doing the World Vets thing, I've rode more now than I have in my life. Yeah. And I'm just no matter what's going on in life, the pressures, any of the stuff that, any bills, any blah, 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 just pick your poison, gone. And just to be able to hyper focus on something, that's the thing that I loved the most, was just the ability to just hyper focus in on something. And it's your math teacher might not have had anything in his life that gave him that feeling,
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what exactly. And that's what I've always joked about, I say I had Asperger's about motorcycles, because it's just, that's what it was. And it, I mean, the amount of riding I did when I was a kid, and, always, timing stuff, and I got the nickname when I was a kid, LT, because I was always like, hey, what's your lap time? I was like, if that's what it's about, then you got to put everything else together and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I rode so much as a kid, doing a lot of flat track training. I didn't race it, but I had a lot of, I had 6 XR100s with the street tire on the back and the knobby front, TT courses and a big flat track and all that kind of stuff. So that's, I mean, the amount of time I rode, it was unreal.
Did you think about it as a kid, why you rode or why you liked it so much?
No, I didn't think about it like that. What I would always do is if I was going out and I was even by myself or something, I would do a 15 lap little race. And I would go in imagination mode where I'm thinking that, it's I've got a second gap and, all that kind of stuff. And now that I have my little girl, one of them, she's super, imaginative in that way. And obviously she gets that for me, because when I was a kid, that's kind of how I would run it in my head. I'm like, okay, well, he's behind you by 1 second, or he's 1 second ahead, and just kind of would do these imaginary races, but it kept me focused, and it was what I love to do.
Kids are so much gnarlier than you give them credit for, eh?
Yeah, now, like I said, now that I've got a couple, you realize, a lot more stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know if it's the same for you, but I don't feel any different than when I was 10.
No, I mean, I'm pretty immature still, in a lot of ways.
But even just in the voice in your head, because you're obviously we're just conversating with ourselves all the time, right? That imagination of oh, this guy's a second ahead, that's you talking to yourself essentially. Yeah. And it's the conversations that I was having with myself as a 10-year-old are the same that I'm having now. I'm not I guess I'm smarter in some ways.
Yeah, but it's still the same.
It's me. I'm still that guy. And when you look at a kid that's any 10-year-old, you just don't think that there's that complex of a world going on inside of a kid's head. And then it's I always find it so impressive with guys like you, any athlete that was dedicated from such a young age, that there was a really high level internal dialogue going on in that person's brain to push them to the place that they got to now.
Yeah, I mean, when I was, I would say it really started hardcore when I was probably 12, just being analytical about everything, and just trying to look for any speed I could, and just all the differences. And it's you get locked in, and you're like that. And then talking about kids, it's the same thing. Like when my daughter, she starts reading some of her books that she reads, I can look over at her and it's like, you're in it.
Yeah.
Like you're in Narnia right now. It's like, hey, Lila, and she's just like, oh, and you get, so into it. And that's what motorcycle was, for me when I was a kid. I mean, it was just, as soon as I'm out of school, I hated school.
Yeah.
And it was just an introvert type person, I just didn't like it, and I wanted to be on my motorcycle. I felt like it was always in the way.
Yeah.
And that was it. My dad, he wanted me to always kind of have that backup plan. And I told this to him, a few times, but this was my mentality back then. Now that I'm older, it's like, wow, I can't believe you thought like that, but I did, is that, yes, I'm gonna finish high school and do that stuff, but it was like, Dad, we know now I'm at a level that I can get paid to do it.
Yeah.
I might not be a champion. You don't know at that point, but when you're 12, 13, it's kind of like, all right, well, if you stick with this trajectory and you don't get hurt, you're going to be there, So I just told him, I was like, man, the only reason I'm going to need to know all this other stuff is if I get paralyzed, but then I'm not able to work anyway.
Yeah.
That's the way I looked at it.
Damn, that's gnarly.
That's exactly. I told my mom and my dad that many times. I was like, if I can't race to make money, it's because I'm hurt. And if I'm hurt like that, I can't go to work anyway. So
wow.
That's how, and that started from when I was like 12, 13, 14. And, I had a best friend that was my teammate. He passed away, and that was a lot of my old friends in amateur organization, they know about it. And that was the reason for the number 19. But you're around that stuff, from a young age. So you see it, and it, kind of changes some stuff, but it keeps you focused too.
How did you deal with, was fear a part of, I think what you guys do is just so gnarly, like the speed. I mean, I've ridden Phillip Island, like, Jesus Christ. And then I've been on the back of a bike with Jack Miller, sending the fuck out of it. And it's just like, bro, like, it's not okay. Like, how fast and how dangerous and how not. And that's just one guy around one track, let alone 400 k's an hour, heavy braking, trying to make a pass on tires that are going, like, it is so gnarly to be in that space. And I always think, just like, how do you mentally commit to that and not have that fear?
Now that I've been out of it for a while and not at that speed every weekend or every other weekend, it's different. I mean, I got on the track, a few years ago at Laguna Seca, and I was just on a stock R1, but we were just doing a track day.
Stock R1.
Yeah, but which is,
nothing
it's basic compared to the Superbikes.
Yeah.
And, we're riding at Laguna, and I had a really good pass on Mladin in 07 that won the championship, and it was going up into the corkscrew, and it was a big pass. It was big. And then I'm going in the corkscrew on the R1, 11 years later, and I'm riding at the pace I'm doing, and I'm like, fuck, I used to go to here, and I was still sideways at this point, and then I'm dragging my elbow, in the apex, and I'm thinking what I'm doing now, and I'm not going slow, but it's like when you're doing it every day. I mean, I've always said it's like a fighter pilot or something, that's your office. That's what you're doing every day. You're going through corners 150, the bike's kind of drifting, and you're manipulating the bike through the corners where it's kind of pushing to, opening up the rear kind of deal. And it's normal. It's just, you're not thinking about it, but it's not normal, for the brain. Yeah. And that's what you realize when you retire, and you go back and do it, or you just think about, the stuff you were doing back then. And it's, when you're doing it every day and you've got that talent, it seems like it's nothing. I mean, it's just, you're not even thinking about anything. But in the same time, it's not normal. It's not normal for your brain for a lot of its life to be going over 100, sliding on that edge of crashing or whatever it is, so.
Think about, like, I was talking to this with Brandon Semenuk, actually, like the calculations that the brain can make. It is pretty psychotic when you think about the level at which our brain does physics.
Yeah.
And but just as like a normal person, if you were like to throw me a times table right now, like full retard, like I couldn't, you know what I mean? My brain could not tell you, but you can go to a track, and I'm not the best rider, but it's like I can come in, all these bumps, then I can lean, I can pick up the throttle, I can hit something like that. And it's just, that's calculations. Like, that's your brain doing physics in real time, and you don't even have to think about it. And then it's like the level that you guys did stuff, you know, like you can pick the iconic, like a Casey turn 3, where you're just like, like, what is, like, how, dude?
Well, and it's funny because I was just I was driving my car, you know, a couple weeks ago at Road Atlanta, a track that we used to race at.
The Porsche stuff?
Yeah. And I'm talking with this guy that I met there, and he was super cool and just kind of talking. And he's like, you know, where are you braking at, you know, going into 10A? That was the corner off the back straightaway. You're doing 160 in the car. Used to be like 185 on a bike. And I was like, I don't know. I'm just kind of judging it off my RPM and speed and all that stuff. And that goes even to the bikes. Like, you know, there was a couple tracks for sure in the big braking zones where you kind of have your, you know, the 200 meter board or whatever. But I would say, you know, majority of the time I didn't have a brake marker. It was just, you know, depth perception, just everything, you know, RPM of the bike, speed, all that kind of stuff. You just get in that rhythm, and you don't, you know, you're not having to think about certain stuff. And that's just, you know, again, brake markers are an important thing, and especially kind of amateur riders and stuff like that. But there's a lot of times I think pro racers, you know, unless, like I said, you're in a big brake zone from 200 down to 40, you know, you're just kind of winging it a little bit, or, you know, you got a better drive off the corner before, so you got to back up, you know, 10 or 15 feet, or you got a shit drive out of the corner so you can run it in a little bit deeper. You're just doing all those calculations, and you're not thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's, I wonder if there's some people that just genetically, like, your eyesight's a little bit better. You know, there's these tiny muscles in your eye that stabilize your eye. So like when we take footsteps, it's not like our fucking our world starts shaking, and that's like to do with muscles in your eyes. And it's like, I wonder if there is, you know, it's not like talent as such, but I wonder if talent is, you've got all of these different boxes, like on Street Fighter, you know, you've got all these bars that, you know, you could be 100 in eyes, and then a guy that might be 50. But it's like in day-to-day life, that percentage doesn't mean shit. Like, you could never actually tell. But it's not until you get to 180 miles an hour, which we have zero use for in real life, that some people just genetically have like a bit of a step above, you know. Well,
I mean, there's a lot of those type of people, and I mean, I'll definitely, you know, like someone like Casey and Marquez, they're just on another level of most people. You know, I wasn't, you know, at a bad level, but I know I put in a lot of work outside the track when it came to just watching tape, studying racecraft, knowing how to be with tires, doing a lot of testing with old tires for race distance, doing a lot of testing where we would save new tires and we would bang them on. And so if I got the whole shot, I could be rolling, you know, from turn one. So there were so many different types of development, you know, when I was coming up from like 16 to 19 type thing, that it made a difference. And I didn't see a lot of other people treating it like that. But so I just know at the end of the day, there were a few more talented riders than me, but I think I put in a lot more work. And then, you know, the physical fitness side, I mean, I know I didn't leave anything out there when I was, you know, in my prime of racing. And I'd heard all my life, you know, when people would retire, well, if I would have done this and I would have done that, and it's like, man, you're racing in the grand scheme of things for this long, you know, in your life. And it's like, I can be dedicated and just try to control everything that I can control, which is a lot. There's a lot of stuff you can't control, but there's a lot of stuff you can, you know, from when your plane arrives to how you're going to rest and just everything.
You eat, when everything. You're gonna sleep.
Yeah. And it can, a lot of people can go extreme, you know, too extreme, but in the same time, you know, I feel like how I did it, and what I did, it made the difference, you know. In the AMA Superbike days, I know that me and Matt were the only people doing this, and it was because we had used the same physiologist trainer. So before the races, After the race, you get in the post ice bath, and it just gets you back down to temperature where you start recovering and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of people didn't know that I had a second water tank in my motorhome that I had installed. And then, you know, you had 2 slides in the bedroom type thing. So I put my plunge pool back in my bedroom so nobody would see it, even when they came in the front of my bus and we were having meetings or something like that. Yeah. So what I was doing is, you know, 45 minutes before the race, I would get in that plunge pool, but it would be a lot warmer. It'd be more like a pool temperature. And then you just drop the, you know, the degree by like half a degree every minute or two until you get to the point where you've been in there for 25, 30 minutes and you're almost about to shiver, which is your body warming up. So then you get out, you know, I would hear like the 15-minute horn. I would jump out. I'd do like some quick stretching and get in my leathers. So when you go outside, you know, it's just like being in a cold pool for a long time. You get out, you're cold for a long time, or you're hot, whichever way it goes. Yeah. So like we go out there on a 95 degree, 100 degree day. The first 30 minutes, it feels like it's 70 to me outside. Like if you touch my skin, it's cold. Yeah. So then, you know, in the race, you're spending 40% less of the race in the red zone, that your red blood cells are getting destroyed and it's going to be more recovery, et cetera, et cetera. So you're getting the performance, you know, for the race. But then when you're doing double headers and you're racing the next day, or you're racing the next week,
or you're racing like World Superbike where there's 2 races in a day.
And if you're doing that from the first race through the season, how many percents are you saving or not destroying your body to fully recover for that next week and that week after and all that stuff? And that's the things that I've always looked at. It adds up. Those little half percents, you know, the leathers being perfectly tight for the straightaway, you know, being tucked in, doing all that stuff. And nobody, you know, till probably now, a few people know, but you know, not many people know that I was like that secret about it. I would fill that tank up. You would never see me hook up to a water hose. I would drain it kind of at the end of the day, like under my motorhome type thing, like on Sunday. So none of the racers knew about it, you know, and it was a contraption, but a thing that really helped. I mean, it was a huge benefit.
And not only physically, but mentally.
Oh, yeah, because I know that.
Because you feel like you have an edge over everybody every single time you're on the grid, no matter the pace, tires, bike, whatever.
Well, I know. I mean, it's like I know that my body's in a better place. I know that it's cooler for the next day and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a big difference.
Yeah. So what do you think a guy like, you said Marquez and Casey are on just like another level. Yeah. I mean, what is it in those guys, do you think? Like, have you spent much time thinking about that, or does it just fuck with your head too much?
I mean, they're just, you know, it's like it's just, you got to write it off to people are just, there's levels, you know, and it's, you know, like Valentino, Jorge, Danny, all those guys, great riders. And there were days that, you know, I could run with them or beat them. There were days that they beat me. The days when they beat me, you know, the GP bikes, if you just didn't have the right feel, you know, it's like 2/10 a lap. You can see it. You're just not you don't have that feeling to be able to roll with them, but it's not blowing your mind. It's like, man, well, if I just was a little bit more comfortable, or the setting was like, I can see it. It's not crazy. It's just not right there. With, you know, Casey or Marquez, you can literally follow them and through a 2-turn series, you know, deal. And it's like, shit, you know, I can do that 2 out of 10 times. He's doing it 9 out of 10 times, you know, and it's just, those are the only 2 people where it's like, okay, like they're just better, you know? So that's why it was always nice too when I won my MotoGP race that Casey was second, you know, because we were good buddies and stuff like that. And that was the one day that, you know, and there were a couple days, but that was just the one where it lined up in a race that, you know, we got out, I was a couple seconds ahead of him, and I'd been fast the whole weekend and felt really comfortable on that track. And it was like I was setting the pace, and I'd, you know, like 3.5 seconds on him or something, and then I came back and, you know, it's 3.4, and then the next lap it's like 3.2, and I was like, okay. And then I'll see that and I'll raise it, you know, 1/10, and then I put him back to 3.5. And then we kind of stayed at that a little bit. Then he made another little effort and kind of got it to like 3.2, and I answered again. And like the second time, I could see he didn't give up, but he was like, okay, I'm not.
That I need it.
Yeah, he's got a response for this, and I'm just too far back. So, you know, it was nice for the one and only MotoGP race to, you know, him be second, and I had his number, you know, that day because he had my number, you know, 90% of the time.
It just is phenomenal that's a thing. You know, we all got 2 arms, 2 legs, and a heartbeat is what my dad used to say. Yeah. But it's like, we don't know. Yeah. You know, there's just some people have some freak shit going on.
And everybody knows it. Like I talk with some of the riders that I know they can see, you know, everything. They just might not have raced against them, and we'll have those conversations, and they're just like, you know, those 2 dudes are just on another level. You know, they are. And not saying that the guys aren't great that they're racing. It's just that next step.
And it's just the percentages. Like the average dude is so much better than everybody else on planet Earth. Yeah, like Max Verstappen right now. Oh. It's like, how good is Fernando Alonso? How good is Lando Norris? Like, they have Lewis Hamilton. Yep. Incredible.
Well, I mean, it's like, what happens, do you think, you know, when he gets in Fernando's car? I mean, or Lewis's car. It might not be as good as the Red Bull car right now, but you don't think he's going to be faster than them?
But when you're winning by a race by 24 seconds.
And you have a teammate that's not slow.
No.
You know, I mean, I know Sergio's not the big race winner, but he showed in other cars where he's at.
And that car too at times.
Yeah. But it's like Max is just on another level. Yeah. You know, I mean, you can see it. That's the way he's focused. That's the way he's built. He's a machine. I
just wish there was a way to decode what was actually going on. Like, what is it? You know, because like I'd say to people all the time, like, and I think it's the beauty of motorsports is that me and you can go to a track day and we have the same feeling. Yeah. Fuck, I need to hit the brakes. I'm going too fast. Oh, I can't feel the front. Like that's what you're adjusting to the whole time is that like you're trying to ride the edge. You're trying to ride the limit. That feels the same for me as you. I'm just 40, 50, 60 mile an hour slower, you know? But it's like those guys are having the same feeling, but it's just that bit down the road or it's just a bit deeper into the turn.
And it's a lot of, you know, just having – I kind of always just called it the killer instinct. You know, I mean, if you're wanting to win that much and you are winning that much, you're also thinking that when you're on the track, like, ain't nobody, they ain't got it. You know, like, I guess my kind of mindset too is, let's take Marc Marquez, for example, when he follows people in qualifying, when he's, you know, because again, he's the ultimate competitor winner and he's on a bike that's the worst bike. So he's like, I've got to do it. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. And, you know, it's just one of those things that when you're in that zone, you're kind of willing to do whatever it takes just to win, you know. And I told my bicycle team, we have a bicycle team back home, and I told the guys a long time ago, I was like, you know, you can put in the training, you can do all this stuff, but you also have to have that mindset that you're going to win, you know. And it's like, let's pretend I was at the end of a race with a Lance Armstrong and somebody else that's at that level. If for whatever reason I'm with them and there's only 3 kilometers to go, I've quit thinking that it's Lance Armstrong. You know, it's like all I'm thinking about is what do I got to do to win? That's all that matters. And, you know, there's certain people that think a little bit more like that. And I'm not saying just taking stupid risk or anything, but you've got to have that killer, you know, in you if you're going to be a winner for a long time. I mean, those are the things that they're doing a few things different, but their mindset also most likely is a little bit different too.
Yeah, and Marquez is such a crazy example. Like right now, probably on the worst bike, and
for sure,
just prepared to die.
Yeah,
you know, like, and that we talked about a little bit at breakfast, but the Mandalika crash,
huge,
was me. I felt terrible for him.
Yeah,
for a start because you could see that was a bike thing.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, this fucking guy is willing to die to get this bike back up front and to win, and it's just like you have to respect that. And and you know, this year, like, he obviously, there's been some pretty massive struggles as well, you know, like when he took out blanking on the name at the start of the year on the Aprilia. Why am I blanking on the name? Not the factory Aprilia.
Espargaro?
No. Who's
Vinales?
No, the second team. What was?
Who would it be? Oliveira?
Yeah, it was Oliveira. He took out Oliveira, and it's like he got hammered.
Yeah,
by hammered, and it's like I get it, but also like just respect that the guy's out there just absolutely giving it everything he can. Like,
but you had you had the Yellow fan base and the Marquez fan base, and it was just too easy for them obviously to go against Marquez. But no, that's what I've been saying about him for the last kind of 4 years is if you look at what he's been through and, he's been loyal to Honda and all that kind of stuff, the people that know, most of his crashes in the past 4 years, they're his fault because he's going over the edge, but it's because the bike is not there. Yeah. And they're like, oh, Marquez, he's going to crash or he forgot how to ride. It's like, where is anybody else on a Honda that's in his zip code? Nobody. Yeah. Like nobody. So,
and that's because they're not prepared, like you said, to go to that extent. And like he got a podium on the weekend.
Oh yeah, and that's why I'm happy for him. He's not a friend of mine or anything. I respect him, but I'm happy that he's getting on a bike that can win because in my eyes, with what he's been through and what he's done, what he's already achieved, but then what he's had to go through, it's he's paid his dues, and it's like you've got a few years left. And it'd be nice to see, on a bike that you can have confidence on and, go back for the win. So I'm glad he, made the move. And he stuck with Honda a long time. And it's been, the people that understand how the development works with the Japanese to the Europeans and all the stuff, they've kind of known that he's been stuck. And he's probably most likely going to be stuck for a couple more years until they really think outside the box and change the bike. But, he had a few years left, and I think he made the smartest move. And some people are like, oh, he's getting paid $10 or $12 million from Honda and this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, if I'm putting myself in his shoes and I'm worth the money that he's worth, $10 million to be back on a bike that can win, you're going to make more than that, going forward, or at least the same. So it's for him, it's not a money thing. I mean, he's got plenty of money. He just wants to be on a good bike again. And he knows that the way the development is with the Japanese, there's no way that they'll have a bike, next year that's competing with that Ducati. It's not going to happen.
Oh, and just like afraid to die.
Yeah.
You're just being on that bike, and you've seen the crashes that he's had by just trying. Like, never say die.
Yeah.
There might not be. I mean, it's like Mick Doohan level shit. Just ready to absolutely like pay the price to win the race.
And again, he's shown that from the crashes. He's shown it from when he wins, but then he's also shown it where, hey, I don't have the pace, but I'm still so I'm going to follow you in qualifying and try to get a toe to be that much closer. And that mentality, and I'll put Jack Miller into this, is where, he followed Jack one time. And Jack just kind of made some jokes, and they had fun, and it didn't really mess with Jack too much. Other riders, it does, and they get really pissed off about it and all this kind of stuff. And the mentality that they should be having at that level, I think, or at least how I would have been if I was riding in my prime, is that if I look back and I see Mark's on me or anybody's on me to follow me, and I feel good and I feel like I'm one with the bike and having no troubles, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go do my qualifying lap with you behind me. And when we hit the checkered flag and we're done, I'm going to sit up and look back, and I'm going to see that you either lost the front chasing me or I put half a second on you. Yeah. That's what it is, and that's what you have to be thinking if you want to take people down like that, or you want to be, the ultimate kind of winner. And it's just, some people have it, some people don't, but that's when it kind of gets to the nuts and bolts of like, fuck it, I'm going to get it done. Like, I'm going to make it happen.
Well, and you can just see the dudes, at least from, I've been around a lot of champions, and the guys that I know that become the best.
Yeah.
Everything's a competition.
Yeah, no,
every look at a press conference, every word that gets said, every posture that you take when you're walking through pit lane, the way that your hair is, the shoes, everything says winning.
Yeah, and it's not always easy for people to be around, you know.
Oh, no
there's no
way,
doubt,
man.
you know,
No.
and that's why there's a couple of my real close friends where it's like, I know how it used to be. And like we'd go ride motocross like a few years ago, and at this point, you know, I'm not training that hard and I'm just going out and riding. I'm a normal person.
Yeah,
and,
you're back human again.
Yeah, and it's like we're riding, and you know, there was one, like I had this thought, and we were just sitting there, you know, having Gatorades and sitting down. I was like, hey guys, you know, I'm sorry about like 10 years ago when I was kind of like, come on, let's ride. Like, come on, you know, let's go, because you're not getting tired. And then now it's like, okay, like I'm not training, I'm not in that life all the time. I realize like, okay, let's have fun and be normal. And you realize how you used to be about it, and how hard the sport is, you know, if you're not fully trained for it and doing all the stuff.
Well, and like the level of selfishness that you have to be an athlete.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, you do. It's like I said, some people can deal with it better, and it, you know, some people it doesn't get translated, you know, to the other people in a way. But no, you have to. I mean, if you're winning and you're wanting to win, and that's what the goal is. I mean, you try not to be selfish about it, but you've got to put yourself first, and you've got to ask for everything when it comes to, like, you know, resting. I wasn't a big media person, you know. I always loved the media people in our team, but they, you know, sometimes they come try to get a quote, and I'm like, no, I'm not even talking right now, you know. And I know it wasn't easy, but that's also what made me riding, and I could stay focused like that.
Yeah, that mentality and that mindset also, I think, makes sense when you're in a position where your career is extremely finite.
Yeah.
Like you kind of, you know, like, all right, I've got X amount of years to try and make enough money to where I can retire, provide for my family. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure in that situation as well that is kind of strange. And like, I've probably started feeling that a bit more in my life over the last few years as like things get bigger.
Yeah.
You've got more eyeballs on you, but you've also got staff to take care of. You've got a family. Like you just go from being this person that's just got you to worry about.
Yeah.
And selfishly you ride for fun, or you want to win races for your own feeling of wanting to win.
Yeah.
But then it definitely shifts and it becomes about, dude, with this program, like I have a bus and I have drivers and I have staff and I have like, there's money going out, and then you're trying to make enough money because you know, like it hangs over your head, especially in the gig you're in, you know, like it hangs over your head that, hey, at any point this shit could be over. And you could be injured and have to retire. And I mean, it fucking happened. Yeah,
no, I mean, I've had, you know, a couple friends pass away from it. I've had a lot of friends get hurt, you know, where they can't do it again. You know, and it is something, you know, luckily the group I had around me, they understood me, you know, and they let me kind of do a lot of the stuff I needed to do to put myself in the right place. But like I said, from the outside, sometimes, you know, people just don't understand it. And it's like, you know, I can easily see how people, you know, oh, you know, can be arrogant, or he's a prick, or he's just, you know, he doesn't wave, or he's tunnel vision. And, you know, when I was racing, it was about winning. And like I told you earlier, if there's like a road right or left and more attention's the right way and left is less, I'm going left, you know, every time. And it's not about me not, you know, appreciating the fans or anything like that. It's just, I'm so focused on it, you know, and that's kind of, it's not a great thing in some ways, but then in some ways that's what made me, you know, be able to do what I did.
Did you feel a lot of pressure in those aspects of your life? Like not even just the pressure to win, but just providing and retirement, and was it something you really thought much about?
No, I mean, I felt the pressure to win, you know, because you know, we had some decent, you know, luck in America, and then we won the Superbike titles, and then we went, you know, in race World Superbike and won that the first year, and then that put me into MotoGP, where everybody's like, okay, you know, is he going to win? Is he going to win a championship and all this kind of stuff? And, you know, and it's just, and that was the natural step with GP. And again, it was something that I wouldn't say I wanted to do it so much. I respected it, but I knew the differences in the bikes, you know, and I tested them a couple times, but, you know, it was just at the decision where, you know, Valentino, I think they kind of knew he was going to be leaving, you know, in a couple years. And we were almost done with the 2009 season, and they were wanting me to sign for GP. But at that point, I was coming back in the points. I was still in second. So it wasn't a lock that I was going to win the championship. but I had to make that decision before, and then go do GP. And now that I look back at it, I'm not upset at all that I did, that I did GP, but I know I wasn't able to get 100% out of me and the bike. And it's my fault, but there was probably 3 or 4 days on the bike that I felt as comfortable as I did on a Superbike. Like I was able to get everything out of me and it felt great and all the stuff. It was just a different style of riding the bike because I went from thousands to when they were 800s. And it was more like a big 250 and just a different way of riding a bike. It's more corner speed. It's a little bit less braking and upsetting the bike. And I just couldn't get it as quickly as other people. And they had been, obviously the Europeans, they're raised, that way. And then you have the Superbike guys that come over. And I don't think any Superbike guys ever, went over there and, like I said, won the champ, besides Nicky, won the Superbike that year. But then after that, he was, I wouldn't say a couple, he was just a little bit behind the top guys. And we talked about it a lot too. And I mean, it's difficult to, because the bikes are so different. A Superbike to a super sport bike is a massive difference, but a GP bike to a Superbike is way bigger. There's no weight transfer. You can't, like with a Superbike, if you're kind of off a little bit or feeling something with the bike, you can manipulate it, as in, getting a little bit more weight to the front.
You can override it a bit.
You can. And with the GP bike, it's kind of like, if you're at a lap time when the race starts, that's kind of where you're at. It's hard to do things with the bike to make it work when you're not fully in tune with it. And that was what I struggled with, just because, again, I was a late breaker. I like to brake as late as I could, get the thing stopped, rotated, and pick it up, and get out of the corner. A GP bike, the best analogy compared to Superbike is like you go into a corner, you let off the brake earlier, and you pretend you're in a rut. Or like a bobsled turn almost, where you've got that, you're trying to get force in the side of the tire, and that gives you the roll speed, through the corner. So my style just in general was not good for it. And it's kind of like the same thing where you see with Top Rack, the way he rides the bike. He's unbelievable. And, he's got some of the most talent of anybody. I mean, I put him up there close with Marquez and them.
Really?
When it comes with raw talent.
Yeah.
But if he gets on a GP bike, he has to go through a phase where he'll struggle a little bit, and it's because how he rides the bike and how those bikes need to be ridden. He tested them and, kind of had the same comments a little bit of what I thought it was going to be. And because I talked with him a little bit and we talked about GP and I said, man, I think with your age and the bikes you've been brought up your whole life, it's going to be tough, because we've seen the people that have done it and all that kind of stuff. Or you can build a legacy, and win a few World Superbike titles like Johnny Ray did, which again, Johnny Ray, he was fast enough to be a MotoGP, but the way he rides the bike and what he's been used to his whole life, he's got to change his style, and that might take something away from him, So I think, like I said, Johnny Ray staying and winning 5 or 6 titles was a better move than going to GP. And I'm not, because I had great races with Johnny. I just know when you're used to riding super bikes or super sport bikes your whole life, you're going to have some tendencies that aren't good for GP.
Yeah. And you see, like, I think, you sort of said it when we were at breakfast, that here it's so much more production-based motorcycles that you're turning into race bikes and racing. Whereas when you go to Europe, then you basically racing race bikes forever. Yeah. And it just changes the development of you as a rider. Yeah.
No, it does. And, there was a lot of things we tried with the bike. I tried with my style. And, I wasn't slow over there, but I just, I
didn't have the feeling.
I didn't, I never felt like I was operating at 100%. I was just not comfortable on that bike and that type of riding style. Because I was, my first Superbike title was with no traction control in 2006.
That seems so wild to think about.
So it was kind of like the most analog bike to ride, the fastest, most refined analog bike. And then the electronics started taking off. So I had been ingrained riding those bikes, from 18 to when I won the first title. And then all this stuff starts taking off with the electronics. Then you have the difference in the bikes too. And that's just, there was so much going on. I couldn't get the package to be 100% in Europe in GPs. And again, that's, most of it's my fault, you know, and it's just, it was a riding style thing and a comfort thing. Again, we weren't slow, but it wasn't, you know, I felt like we could have done more. Not saying we could have won the title, or I'm not saying we could have won all these races, but I was never at home on the bikes. I wasn't.
What is the main differences, like, if you had to kind of, obviously everything, but like
the stiffness, the stiffness is way more there's less.
That's feel.
Yeah, and there's less. Yeah, and there's just, like I said, I was going to say, there's just complete less feel, and you got the casings of the tire in MotoGP are a lot stiffer than they are on Superbike. So you've got, you know, everything that's just working differently. Where Superbike, you have so much feel, you know, with the bike, and you can do things differently and pivot it and kind of rotate it in the middle of the corner, because the grip from the tires was a little bit lower, but it's also got that roll in the casing. Where the GP bikes, it's just it's a completely different thing, you know. And if you want to, if you're wanting to get the, you know, the bike to have that little bit more bite, where on a Superbike, you could, if you're going through a corner, you could just kind of get back to the gas a little bit and then get off of it and get it to kind of get down and tighten up and finish the corner. Where a GP bike, those little increments in the corner
upset the bike instead of stabilizing,
or it doesn't change it. You know, it kind of, you can, where you kind of get to the throttle, you could get the rear spinning without the bike actually dipping down or the front changing, because they're just so stiff. And they have, you know, I would say they have half the weight transfer, as in just front to back when you're braking or something like that.
Yeah, which that's kind of everything. Like when I'm riding a moto, that's sort of what the first port of call is, to just balance out the bike so that it's not having these big weight transfers back and front, or not enough.
It's more almost thinking about like having a new motard bike, and it's got, you know, motocross suspension on it with slick tires. Like you feel that type of weight transfer compared to a fully set up supermoto bike. That's, you know, that's the difference you're looking at with Superbike and GP.
Yeah, and flex is such a crazy thing. I was watching, I think it's Mike on Bikes. I don't know if you've ever seen his YouTube channel. There's this guy that has this fantastic YouTube channel. He's a European guy. And yeah, he explains so much about, you know, like just rotating mass and the gyroscopic effect. Like, he really breaks down the science of motorcycles. And I kind of never really understood exactly what flex was. And it's basically, no, I'm not telling you this like you don't know, but it's like when you lean the bike over, the suspension stops going up and down, and the force starts going up and basically lifting the tire off the ground. So if you hit a bump, or the tire is then going to go vertically. And it's like, if you don't, that's where the stiffness and rigidity comes in, because if you have a little bit of flex when you're on the side of the bike, you actually, the front wheel has a bit of room to go upwards or on like a horizontal plane, and or the rear has a bit to go on a horizontal plane. But that's all in metal. Like that's chassis suspension essentially. Like, that's probably the easiest way of saying it, is like, once you tip the bike over to a certain point, the suspension stops going up, and you're expecting the chassis to be suspension. Yeah,
and the way the front of the head spar works and the chassis, getting the right flex in that, you know. And that's, you know, two examples of kind of talking like that was racing at Imola. You know, we raced there and we tested there, you know, in the 2009 season. But when we got there, I mean, I wasn't in the race for the win. I was in the race for like third or fourth. And no matter what I did, you know, we couldn't get that bike to work. And then the Ducati, it was that trellis chassis. So the thing flexed and it just walk away from you. And it's like, God, like it was such a big difference. And then, you know, kind of looking back at AMA days, there was a track called Brainerd, and turn one is wicked fast. It was on a Superbike. It was pretty much, you know, 6 gear getting down to the end of the straightaway, no brakes, back one gear, and pretty much wide open. No, it's wicked. And it's banked, and it's kind of bumpy, and it's gnarly. But I remember watching Kaczynski go through there on a Ducati. And the Ducatis, they were just so much better through there because they had the flex. And you could just, like a good rider, a good mechanic could go sit at the end of pit wall and watch, you know, a Cowie Superbike come through there, like Chandler came through there, and then here comes Kaczynski. you can just see it. I mean, it's night and day different. So there's that, that fine line of having the right flex, but not too much, know. It's tough.
The craziest thing I think I've ever seen motorcycle wise was I went to Trentino this year to watch the MXGP.
Yeah.
And so Febvre's bike, I don't know, I'll ask if I can talk about it. I'll delete it if I have to. But they have the factory frame on his new, they built that new 24 Cowie, right?
Yeah.
And so all the top tube, all that, to basically the V, like the bottom cradle of the frame. The bottom cradle of that frame was CNC machined, right? Mm-hmm. So they were just taking all this metal out to get the flex. Mm-hmm. And you could hear it thump. Like you could hear the chassis absorbing bumps. Like it was the crazy, and like I'm standing there at the end of they've got a finish line, and then it was just these gnarly bumps coming into a left-hander and then out. And
you can just the energy of the bumps in the bike, you could hear it. Yeah.
And like you hear Hurlings come past, Prado come past, and it was just like a mechanical like clanging of you could hear the rigidity and everything slapping.
And then his was more like a thump.
Yeah. And it was the craziest. And so then I was talking to Tucker about it, and he's like, "Oh, it's CNC machine, and that it's only going to last X amount of hours." And I'm just like, "Wow." Yeah. And what a Febvre would say is that you just feel comfort through your feet.
Yeah.
Like you can feel the chassis kind of giving. And then, like the extreme example of that is like you get on a 03 YZ250 and you kickstart the bike and it literally feels like it's flexing at the subframe, the swing arm pivot bolt.
But then in like, in not hindsight, but, looking at it differently, with Febvre's bike, like you were talking about, like that, you take that to Supercross, it might
no, you can't.
It's going to be like the old KTM chassis, where it's like it's great when it's
a rubber band,
low whoops, and it's a hard packed track because it's got the grip, and that's what you usually see. I mean, when they get to like the dry slick, super hard packed tracks, the softer chassis are going to work better. They're just going to have more grip, more feel, and all that kind of stuff. But when you're running these whoops that are 4.5 foot tall or something, you can't have that.
Did you have much to do with any of the sort of top level moto guys back then?
No, I mean I had a lot of friends, kind of because we were sharing.
Texas is a pretty good area.
Yeah, and then when we were with Suzuki, half of the race shop was road, half of it was moto, and that was, Ricky was there.
Because it was Makita Suzuki when you were on it. Yep.
So like Ricky was there, Tedesco was there, like Brock Hepler, Millsaps, a lot of those guys. So I got to, kind of get to know them and watch them ride and all that stuff.
When you retired, you got to kind of like live a bit of a moto fantasy for a bit?
Yeah, because I motoed a little bit. When I was a kid, I was no good at it. Like jumping, I couldn't get to grips with it.
Yeah.
It was just, I sucked. I was a good flat tracker, but I wasn't a good moto rider. And then when I was like 16, 17, I kind of got better with it, started having more fun. And then I did ride a lot, in the 06 and 07 season. Then I separated my shoulder before the season, 2 weeks before the season, and actually raced the whole season with it separated. That was my first title in 06. And so rode a lot then, and then when I signed with Yamaha, I couldn't ride. They wouldn't let it.
Really?
So, and I was kind of in Europe too, so it was a different thing. I didn't have all my stuff, and so yeah, I just wasn't really into it as much. And then when I retired, I started riding again, and it was one of those things where I couldn't ride too long at just 100%, but I could move around and it was fun. And I had my old track at, my land that I used to train on and kind of fixed it up. And Casey came over and we rode a lot and had some fun.
He can ride a moto good.
Yeah. No, he's got that feel. I mean, again, we both weren't great jumpers. I was a little bit more comfortable than him, but anytime you were on the ground, it was on. We had some good little battles out there. It was fun.
We went riding. It was actually a couple of years ago now. Pretty much made him buy a 450 after the podcast. I was like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And you go out and the corner speed.
Yeah.
And like the way that Troy Herfoss is the same, actually. He rides like really...
He raced in America some.
Yeah.
I remember him.
Yeah, he raced. He was actually in a race in Australian National before I came over here. We were training.
Oh, so he rolls then.
Oh, rolls
like Jake Gagne fast.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't know what he would have got. Like just because the track gets so gnarly, but if you put him on like a normal track, a normal day, like a practice day, not like a national, I'd say he would be able to go a pretty solid speed. I think once shit starts getting
gnarly, like gnarly, the knee deep ruts and stuff like that.
It's just because you don't do it as much. Like even I've been running Glen Helen every week I've been here, and then I rode it on Saturday, and I went there at 12 o'clock, and it was a different track that I'd ever rode, and I'm like, okay, so there's levels, but as far as a guy being able to run a really good pace, like he is insane. But you can just see the way that you guys see corners is a lot different to the way a moto guy sees corners, the way that you turn in the bike, the way that, like even, you know, Herfoss, that was his big thing, is like, oh, I'm just trying to get the weight transfer. Like, I just got to get that right. Like, that's everything to him in a motorcycle or motocross bike or any motorcycle, where other people or more moto people, like, sort of don't really care.
Yeah.
But there's such a cool way you guys look at corners and corner speed, and it's just,
and it depends what type of corner it is. You know, if it's kind of an open flatter turn, you know, it's obviously a little bit different. When it gets all deep rutted and everything, that's when the experience goes out the window. But now there's again, like I brought up Gagne. I don't know if you know about him riding moto, but dude, I've never seen him, but he rolls. I mean, it was a few years ago now, maybe 3 years ago, something like that, maybe 4 years ago. But he rode a factory Yamaha in an outdoor at Salt Lake City, that track that they had inside the racetrack. And he ran an AMA National and didn't finish last. Like, he hurt his knee, I think, and he didn't ride Moto 2. But like he finished like 25th or something in a 450 moto. And I mean, I know he's always ridden and stuff, but he kind of got that bike, put in a little bit of time and did it. And for a road racer to do that, I mean, I don't know anybody else that's done that fast.
Man, have you ever seen Jack Miller ride moto?
No, he's quick. I haven't seen him, but I definitely know he rides.
Like, gnarly, dude.
Yeah.
And just 30s.
Yeah.
Like, he will just go. I've never seen many other people ride as much as him. He'll ride like 4 bikes in a day. Yeah. And he'll put 35 liters of fuel.
Yeah, that's how I was kind of back in 06, 07 days. I'd get a stock, you know, a couple 250s from Suzuki, put a pipe on them, get the forks done, get the shock done, but not, you know, A-kit stuff, just kind of getting them done. And then, you know, I just change air filters and ride. And I mean, I used to do so many kind of 30-minute motos, and it just, if you can stay off the ground, you know, when it comes to physical training, there's a lot of things to do, but motocross kind of checks most of the boxes. But you know, the quicker you go,
the more risk that you have.
Yeah, so I kind of built a track that was pretty mellow. You know, it was like a vet track, but it was like 1:50 long. And I had sprinklers. I had like 150 sprinklers the whole track. So I could water it at night before them wake up, and it's all, you know, good, and just rode so much. And again, it was kind of, you know, I didn't let it get super ruddy. You know, I'd kind of always keep it where I was trying not to, you know, get my knee stuck in something or do something like that. So, I love that track. That's what Casey got to ride when he came.
I remember him telling me ages ago that he used to go to your place and he loved riding it. You had like a 350 or something there that he rode?
Yeah, had a 350, and then had a 250F, and then I'd always kind of borrow another bike when he was in town. We'd invite people out there, and we had fun. It was really good.
Yeah, I think Texas is just sick for that.
Yeah,
like,
and the dirt we have is
crazy.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's a lot of that kind of sandy loam with a little bit of clay in it. So, no, some good riding spots, and you know, I miss, you know, riding kind of the dirt bike at that level, but you know, after I had a pretty good crash, you know, a few years ago, that just kind of changed everything a little bit.
Yeah, have you spoke much about that crash?
No. You saw the video.
I've seen the video. That was really bad. That's like unfortunately, worst case scenario.
Yeah, and it was, you know, it's probably one of the closer times, you know, I've gotten to not being here, you know, and it's just, you know, it's something just happens, got run over, you know, on a track, and you know, it broke my arm in like 9 or 10 places, and like 3 or 4 ribs in my neck. And, just the way it kind of scorpioned me into the ground, like you saw it was bad. And I'm really lucky, there's no doubt. And then when I just came home, got 2 little daughters, and I was just like, you selfish prick. Like, you can't do that shit, So I'm not done riding, but I've got to make it where it's just fun, because anytime I get on a bike, I can't help it but start trying to go.
Wick it up a bit.
And so I've kind of got into cars where I can go to that level, but it's safer. And like I said, I'll do stuff on the bikes, but it's a problem with my mentality a little bit too. It's just you want to just start, squeezing it and going, and it's just I don't need to be doing that stuff anymore.
I think too, like, sort of, not to keep coming back to it, but I think that whole like being introverted thing, when you can do something that's so complex and so focused, and you don't have to talk to anybody, you don't have to be around anybody, like it really does make sense that that's a place where you want to spend a lot of time. Like, it's just so isolated, but you're also getting so much out of it. It's so complex.
Yeah. And it kind of even, it was cycling for me, road cycling, because when I moved to Europe, I was in Italy, didn't really know anybody. I had my, mechanics living with me, but just, didn't have my motocross bike. So I'd go out on my bicycle, and I was doing, a couple, 4 to 6 hour rides, with like pro cyclist kind of thing. And you're doing kind of like 2 climbs in a ride that are 40 minutes long. You just turn on your iPad and just look at your power meter or something and just start going, and it's helped pass the time, really good for me when I was living there. But it's kind of the same thing. You get locked in and nobody can mess with you. Nobody's talking with you, and escape a bit.
And so cars, is that like kind of the main thing that gets you there now?
Yeah, now, because it's something that, it's not motorcycles, but you're doing a lot of the same stuff, the same lines on tracks, and, you got a harness in a cage. So it's something that you, like a bike, I can't get on a bike, on a road race bike, and go back to definitely not that level of speed, but not just pushing that hard. Like I'm not going to do it. I'm not riding enough to do it, but it's something you want to do. Yeah. Like when you get on a bike, and with a car, you can go to that level, and it's a whole lot safer. So that's the big reason for car stuff. I mean, there was a few years ago now, we were at Willow Springs, and me and Casey were riding for an A-Stars ride day. Yeah. And we had 2 R1s. And, we were just kind of messing around the whole day with other people, because there was like Barsh was out there riding, and a couple other guys. And then there was one session we just kind of got linked up, and we started riding together, and he passed me, upped it up a little. I passed him, and then I look at what we're going through turn 2 at Willow, and we're starting to like fully slide the bikes on the exits and do all this stuff. And, he passed me again, like, between 8 and 9 at Willow. Like, that's pretty gnarly. And he came up the inside of me, and I was like, all right. And it turned into the people that were in the pits. I could see them.
Everyone's just watching.
They started walking out to pit lane. Yeah. And I was like, oh, snap. So I outbraked him in turn 1 and kind of was all in there all sideways. And when I came out on the exit, I turned around and I was like, yo,
we good.
We need to stop, and we were dying laughing about it. But that's just, that's what it turns into.
It's funny though, like that whole feeling of full clip, like that's the thing I love the most about jiu-jitsu. Yeah. That is the martial art.
I've actually been thinking about, because I want to put my daughters into it so they can protect themselves, but I need to know jiu-jitsu for when they're 16, because it ain't.
Texas jiu-jitsu comes in a holster, doesn't it?
That's yeah. I mean, I'm not afraid with that, but I need to know what to do with my hands a little bit, because
man, if you've got girls,
oh dude, yeah,
because there's some pretty amazing chicks that do jiu-jitsu, and I think that there's just like a level of confidence that, I mean, even I have. Like I talk about all the time with people, it's like, I think the best thing about it is that
you can take care of yourself,
and it makes me just not care. Yeah. Like I've had multiple occasions, probably there's been 3 since I've been training, where just the guys come up to me, and it's just, there's been one of those situations, like one of them was in a nightclub, one of them was in a casino in New Zealand, and and got like, it was 3 a.m. The boys had just done Supercross. It was like me, Chad Reed, Dean Wilson, like my mate Sam. We're just kind of in a corner on the piss, like having a laugh with the boys. And a guy comes up and gets in, tries to get a photo with the boys. And I was like, hey mate, it's 3 a.m. Anaheim one's in like 4 weeks. Like, this isn't really a photo that can get taken. Yeah. And old mate just blew up. Like, fuck you. I'm never getting a fucking chance to get a photo with Chad Reed again. And I was just like, hey man, listen.
Yeah, calm down.
I'm just going to tell you right now, this is not a thing that you would want to do right now. Unless you have some crazy secret martial arts ability that I'm not seeing in you. And I was like, so
your appearance isn't.
I was like, I feel like I know enough about this situation to know that you need to leave now.
It's those times, or it's also, when you're in New York on a subway station, right, or something, and somebody starts doing the type of shit that makes you nervous, and there's a group, and it's like, at least, okay, well, if he gets to level 10, then I can jump on him and whatever. So that's that reason, just protecting the family and also protecting when the girls get older, because I know how it is. And, I'm outspoken, sometimes, and I need to have the rest of it to go with it. So, I've got a couple years, but I want to start with that just to learn, because I know it's good. I mean, it's a good workout. It's good in a lot of ways, but, for protecting them and also putting them into it so they can protect themselves. I don't want to do just like the taekwondo, and I'm not, no disrespect to it, but when it comes to the girls, like, I've got to have them know how to just defend themselves and kind of hurt somebody if they have to,
especially at the school level as well, because for a long time in a girl's life, till 14, probably 12, 13, 14, there's not that much of a physical difference between boys and girls. Yeah. So it's like, I think that...
And sometimes the girls are bigger for a little bit.
For sure, yeah. So I think especially in school, that's one of those things where like a girl could really learn to stick up for themselves from like a really young age and have that confidence, because...
It's the confidence. Yeah. I mean, for sure.
And that's the thing where I think, so much shit can go wrong in a street fight. Like, you don't want a street fight. That's like the long and the short of it. Yeah. But in the times that I've had those altercations with people, from what I take away is that people can see that I don't care. Like, they can see I'm not scared. Yeah. They can see that it's not... I'm fully prepared to do whatever we've got to do, whether the dude fucking beats me up or whatever. But there's a level of, I'm like, okay, I go to the gym every single day and I beat people that train at this for years. Yeah. So it's like, if you've never trained at this and you don't know any of this stuff, you don't have a chance. And that level of confidence then lets you deal with the situation where I'm like, hey buddy, let's not do this. I got this skill set. You don't. That means I win, you lose. Let's avoid it.
And some of the times, not all the times, but I think some of the times when you have that confidence and that kind of situation happens, half the people, I would hope, they see that.
It's
and
they're
like, okay. Yeah. They're like, I know he either is just crazy and doesn't care, or he knows that he doesn't need to be scared.
Yeah. And I can also see it in other people. Like, there was one time I was at Huntington Beach and I got in like a bit of an altercation, but it wasn't it was more like I'm trying to break people up and all that sort of stuff. But then I ended up getting booted from this place, and then I had some fucking chick was screaming at me for this guy. So I was pretty rattled, right? Yeah. So then I've gone across the street to another bar. I'm like, I'm out of here. And then instantly I walked up the stairs and this dude just smashed into me, and I'm like, and I ended up like into a pole and like hit another dude, and I looked at and I saw the dude, and I'm like, that dude wrestles. I just instantly knew. And instead of like my reaction would have been fucker, blowing up like an idiot. And I saw that guy and I was like, hey mate, real sorry. Like, so I think just it gives you such a awareness of who, like, what tough, like not tough, but but I think it's just that what makes it so fun though is it's kind of like a car. Like if you're boxing or taekwondo or whatever, you can't go to the gym and go 100% every day. Yeah. So you kind of like, you're always holding back, and you never unless you fight competitively, you never kind of like really know. But I think that's one of the cool things with jiu-jitsu is like you can get in there every day. Like my wife can go 100% as hard as she can on me, and it's cool.
That's cool.
You know, like the risk of injury is super low.
No, my wife even wants to kind of get, we haven't done it yet, but we've been talking the last 6 months that it's probably, you know, a good thing to do. And we have a lot of friends that like their kids and they do it and they love it, you know, so.
Well, if I end up coming to Texas in November, I'll just take you to we'll just do like a private session with someone, you know, because it's a cool way to, yeah, I think you'd love it too, like the problem solving.
Probably get into it pretty heavy. I know myself.
Dude,
so.
it ruined my life for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
Like I went from 0 to just 2 years of training, probably 5-6 days a week. I went to Thailand. I was going all over trying to, because you realize.
Well, now I know you've done it so much. When I asked you if your girl could take you, I didn't think you did jiu-jitsu. You're like, no, I'm good. I'm like, well, is she good then? But now that I know you train, I get it.
Yeah, well, I got into, when you realize how much you don't know and how deep the rabbit hole goes. Yeah, that's what sucks people in. Oh yeah, and you can get good quick. Yeah, because nowadays, like, the information that you can get. I'd feel sorry. There's like these old black belt guys. They're like 45, 50 years old.
The way that they had to learn.
Oh, and you in 6 months, you can just be like an absolute problem. Yeah. If you use every resource, read every book, watch every DVD, watch every amazing match ever is on you, like the body of information. Oh yeah. That
you can study constantly, you know, and as soon as you know, I guess when you've probably done say like 10 classes and you have an understanding of kind of all the basic stuff, and then you're watching, you know, people like a Gordon Ryan or somebody like that, it's like, okay, I can see everything, and that's awesome. Like, that's nuts.
How far away from Austin are you?
I think 3.5 hours.
Okay.
Something like that.
Because Austin is kind of like the new jiu-jitsu hub of America, basically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Gordon Ryan, I can't even believe you knew who Gordon Ryan was, actually. Yeah. So Gordon Ryan moved there with John Danaher, who he's like the genius kind of Belichick dude of that whole world. And then he split with, they had like, they was called the Danaher Death Squad, and then they split. So then there was like another, the crew that split opened up another gym, and just all of these people have just started moving to Austin, basically because this crew of like 7 dudes is there. That's cool. And then I think Flow Grappling is there. Yeah. And then they're like the I don't know, the biggest kind of promotion website sort of deal. So like the whole, Texas is pretty
There's a younger kid too that I was watching a little bit. His name's Michael
Musumeci.
Yeah. That dude's, I mean, he's an animal for his size. Like an animal. He's just going to lay back and it's like, come get some. Oh, man, that dude's ridiculous.
He is going to rip your leg off.
Oh, yeah.
Completely, you're gone.
And I see it like those guys, how they can stay composed when they've got sometimes the guys that are like trying to get rough on them to break their deal, and they stay at it. Like you can see they're just staying, trying to hook the leg or doing whatever they're doing because they've got that math problem in their head, you know, and they're just not letting stuff upset them when it'd be hard not to, okay, you know, let's just fight then.
Well, you said like you had Asperger's for motorcycles. Yeah. Like I think Musumeci literally has Asperger's. Yeah. Like all the dudes that, there's like these 2 brothers from Brazil, the Miao brothers. Yeah. And they just full blown, like they've got some Asperger's stuff going on. Yeah. And they, you know, people will do, I think that's the other crazy thing with that sport is like, you talk about 10,000 hours to be proficient at something. Like they're probably doing 10,000 hours a year.
Oh yeah. No, I mean they're a lot of the guys that are at the top level. I mean they're masters. They've mastered it, kind of thing, you know. So, no, it's been something I've just watched because I watch a little bit of UFC fighting and stuff like that, and I've just in the past year I've kind of watched jiu-jitsu more and more and kind of started seeing the names and just have an interest in it, you know.
No, I'll definitely try and help you get linked up with some stuff. So we talked a bit about like Marquez before. What do you think of MotoGP from a fan's perspective now? Like, where do you like where the sport's going? What do you think they should change? Like, where are you at with it?
The wings and the aerodynamic part of it, I haven't been on board with it as much just because it's tightened the passing zones down a lot more where there's some corners, there's some big passing corners, and then there's some where you could use to sneak by and just, if you're setting something up, whatever. And then the way the downforce is working, it's shortening those zones up. So it's just making a lot of passing harder, in that way. It's also whoever's obviously hitting the aerodynamics the hardest and the best is obviously Ducati, and they're in a different place. And then kind of even looking at the sprint races, I'm looking at it from a rider standpoint first, and it's, the way those tires work and the rigidity of those bikes that, in the first 2 laps, they're pretty difficult to ride at speed, getting into, and you can have a lot of like little front lockups like Marquez in Portugal when he was following and he had to let off the brake, let it straighten out, but then he got into somebody. And you have these sprint races that are short races, and so much is just decided on the first 2 laps when it's the sketchiest to ride the bike at, that pace. So, but it has brought some good racing, but it's brought, some crashes and injuries too. And the guys are racing like 44 races a year when you look at the sprints, because I think they're doing 22 weekends.
I think it is 40. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
it's
so it's 44. Races, yeah, and it's a lot. And, I'm a fan of the racing for sure, but I just, the aerodynamics and the ride height devices and all that stuff, you're going faster and then technology's there, but sometimes it affects the racing, and that's where I've just always said that for the fans really don't care about a lap time or a lap record. They want to see good racing. And sometimes you can see the best racing like when you're on rain tires and the track starts drying. Yeah. And there's just a limit, but the limit is where...
But it's who's finding the limit and how are they finding the limit?
Well, the way I look at it too is it's like the tire can be a little bit more the deciding factor, where if you've got a lower performing tire that's still safe, I mean, it's going to go race distance, all that stuff, it's a little bit lower level, all the bikes can get to that level. Where in the past with GP, there's been like 1 or 2 manufacturers that basically hit the nail on the head with that tire. Other people, their bike just doesn't work as good on it, and they suffer the whole year. Where if they sit there and came in, and it's kind of like World Superbike with the Pirellis, and it's not that they're a bad tire at all, but they have a tire that pretty much all the manufacturers can kind of get to the...
They can extract the time out of that tire.
Yeah, and the fast guys, the guys that win, are still going to win. But the race is going to be closer. There's going to be more passes and bigger passing zones. And I just look at it from a racing standpoint, on that. And that's where MotoGP is going so much in the other direction of aerodynamics. And like I said, the anti-wheelie where the bike's lower and then it makes the wheelbase super long so it doesn't wheelie. And you're able to use all the power, and it's a lot of cool stuff, but, is the racing any better? And it's just a lot more money when, if anything in the future, maybe some of that stuff gets pulled off because they got to slow the guys down too. Now that they're doing 360 Ks an hour at Mugello, you just can't be, because again, just from a rider, I know that when you go into turn 1, you're going over that rise and the bike's kind of wheeling right there. So everything's topped out, in the suspension. And then you're going into a big braking zone. If you're the 3rd or 4th rider in line and everybody's just kind of spread out, doing their thing after they've been single file on the straightaway, if you don't brake before they do, you're in a real world of trouble because everything starts buffeting. You're getting sucked in. So you're just not able to hold max brake pressure, and then you start running up in there. And if you're, the 4th rider in line, there's nowhere to go. And Alex Marquez had that happen at Mugello, and he threaded the needle. And it was just like basically you could see it happening, and he was coming in there, and then he saw that gap, and he just kind of let off everything to get through it, basically to clear himself, because if he kept trying to stop, he was going to I think he was going to take Marc out. I think that's who it was. But he got in there and he got through him, and then he could run wide and they kind of passed him. But for that, there was like about 70 meters of a section. It was super dicey. And I saw the whole thing and I was like, oh my God. And they're just going so fast now, and it's not about the top speed or the lap record for me. It's about the racing, so I just hope that, for the future that they look at everything, you know, because for a long time they were trying to make racing tighter. And that's when they went back to 800s, and then they went to a spec ECU where everybody had to use the same thing. But I kind of would say every time, well, it's like if you just bring a tire that's just a little bit lower level, not a bunch, but just a little bit, you're not having to make all these crazy R&D changing that costs so much money. So much money for the factories, because, you know, they're racing thousands and they go back to 800s. Then they go back to thousands. And then you got the aerodynamics. So just that engine change in those years, like the millions of dollars that the teams had to spend to do that, and trying to accomplish the same thing that if they just brought a tire that was 15% lower level as like single outright lap time, it lasted the whole race and it was fine. It just didn't have that super high level. You would achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, because the tire at the end of the day, that's one of the most deciding, you know, factors. And if you're making a tire that's just unbelievable, you're trying to make the bike that can stay with that tire and make it work the best, where that's one of the bigger issues.
Yeah. And then what about the electronic stuff? Like, do you think that, because the problem is, like, it's amazing when it works, but then as soon as it doesn't work, it's just a complete disaster, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've never had much good things to say about just all the electronics, because it's, you know, it's something I kind of struggled with a little bit too, but it's part of it. I get it. It's getting transferred to the street. You know, it works, you know, in a great way, but it's really sophisticated. They've kind of went backwards a little bit in a couple spots, but you know, I remember there's a year that, you know, if your bike knows it's going to run out of gas, it'll basically go into an auto lean mode to make it to the finish. Or if it, you know, it's just, it was adjusting basically. And I did not like that. But that was kind of, the electronics are, you know, a big factor in racing. I mean, you're spending probably more time looking at the data on the electronic side than you're looking at with the geometry of the bike, because the bikes are pretty close, pretty set up and dialed when you get to the track. So the amount of time that it's just the computer, you know, and those little bitty things is a lot, you know. And I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's just, it's sometimes I think it's getting a little bit heavy, you know, with the electronics. I mean, you never see a guy coming out of a corner sideways, you know, and that's fun to watch, you know, just a little. It doesn't have to be like old school where you got smoke coming off the tire, but the bikes
we would appreciate that.
Yeah, the bikes just don't get upset or move around as much as they used to, you know.
I know there was a case this year with Millsy where his bike was just lost. Thought he was on a different part of the track.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, obviously the ECU basically changes corner to corner as to what engine braking.
So he thought a certain level of traction control was going to be in it, and it wasn't.
Well, and just like the engine braking coming in to, you know, obviously they'll like have max engine braking coming off one of the straights, and then like basically no engine braking through certain sections. And so the bike was basically in a different turn in the computer than what it was on the track, and then it's just 100% power through like the tight chicane where like they're only delivering a small percentage, and the thing was just like, I got to get off the track. And like when you get to a point where your bike glitches then it's like you can't even ride it at all. And I think about like Pecco's crash, you know, recently, like turn 2, just dude gets the whole shot. There's chaos going on behind him, and then like by himself in the lead.
He's really lucky that you know, and it sucks that the guys crashed in turn 1.
Oh, he's
so lucky that happened, because he would have had 2 other dudes breathing down him, and it's just,
that was scary.
And you know, it's kind of, I think some of the things have gotten better, but you know, it's just it's tough, because the electronics can sometimes put you in a position that you don't want to be in, and you can't get out of it, because that's what, like if you're going through a turn and you go to lose the front and you're already at max lean angle, kind of max grip for the bike, you try to pick it up with the throttle, try to pick the front up. The bike's not going to give you all that power
because of the lean angle.
So you can kind of be stuck in that position
with nowhere to go.
Yeah, and is kind of similar, you know, looking back at the Simoncelli, you know, accident. When that kind of started happening, I was commentating because I'd had a concussion from the week before. So I was watching that happen live.
No way.
And, you know, I was supposed to be in the race. And, you know, he's going through the corner, he loses front. And, you know, and whatever happened, but I just know how the bikes are at that point where if you lose the front and you try to get on the throttle, you can either, if you didn't have all the electronics, you either plow through the front and you crash, or it sometimes would high side you. But at least one of the two, you're trying to get it out of that moment where, you know, he was kind of stuck just plowing the front, you know, and he just drove back across the track because he couldn't get the bike picked up. So those little things, and again, it might not be everything that's what went on, but definitely sometimes the electronics can put you in that position where you're asking for it, you're needing it, but it's because of not breaking the tire loose, it's not going to give it to you. So that's kind of my issue with the electronics in general, but it's 2023. I get it. You know, you have development and all that kind of stuff, but they're so high. And we always say that, you know, the bikes are at a high level, but, you know, these guys don't have roll cages around them and they don't have seat belts. And when you look at the difference from Wayne Rainey on a 500 and Kevin Swantz in the early 90s, and everybody said it was so crazy fast, and now they're doing the speeds they're doing now, it's like, when's enough going to be enough? And it's the same thing even for 450s.
Yeah.
You know, and all the guys will tell you, I mean, it's even the factory bikes, it's not about having more power in a supercross. It's making the power rideable. You know, and it's just a stock 450, you know, off the showroom floor. It's ridiculous. So we are getting kind of to that level where it's like, we got enough power.
Yeah.
You know, maybe too much sometimes.
Man, even I've been riding that. The bike I've got at the moment's a XCF 350.
Yeah,
so
I had one of those. Yeah,
they're awesome.
Yeah.
6-speed gearbox, 47 2.3 sprocket.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's pretty fucking slow.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm riding a 350 because it's slow.
It's nice because it doesn't have all that crazy torque, but it pulls up top like a monster. You know, that's what I tell people from the 350. It's kind of similar torque-wise as a 250, not a giant difference, but the top end is quite a bit more. But when you get on a 450, the torque, I mean, it changes. It's huge compared to a 350. And, you know, I'm not a bad rider on motocross. I'm not a bad rider in general. But when I get on a 450, it's just like, holy shit, this thing's fast. Like these other guys that are getting on them that just don't know as much, God, like they can jump anything. It puts them in a position where they can jump anything. And sometimes that's not good.
Man, David Pingree actually spoke about this point, and I hadn't really thought about it before. No, sorry, it wasn't Pingree. Chris Kiefer.
Yeah.
And he was saying that when you give a guy a 450, they make a mistake and they're just before a big step up or a big tabletop and they're like, fuck it, I'm on a 450. And it's like,
the landing.
Yeah, and it goes, woo, they've getting kicked sideways or they've gone way past the thing. And it's just like, yeah, on a 350, you make a mistake, then it's like, you just got to button off for this lap, buddy. So you're not making this one.
Yeah.
And
but that 450, until you're off the face of the jump, you've got that power
the whole time.
Because just a roll in all the way, I mean, you're jumping so far on those things. So not anti like, oh, bike's got to get slower, but I just think we're getting to the point now where the 450 class and MotoGP and World Superbike, there's a limit somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we're getting close to, I mean, 300, I think they did 366 kilometers an hour at Mugello. And, dude, that's moving, you know. I mean, the guys can, they're used to it. They can handle it. But now when things slightly go wrong in the braking zone, that's when it's like, oh, shit. You know, it's getting too fast now.
I honestly can't imagine today. Like, the fastest I've ever been on my own bike is 290 at Phillip Island down the Start Straight, and that was on the V4 Street Fighter, so that was on the naked bike, and I felt like one of those monkeys they shot into space.
Dude, my buddy has one of those.
They are mental, dude.
He's a neurosurgeon, and he's got trick cars, and he's got a KTM 450, a YZ 250, and then the Street Fighter. It's kind of got all the cool stuff, you know, and I'm just like, Kurt, man, you know, how is that thing? And he's just like, it is so fast. I'm like, I know. Why do you have that bike? You know, it's ridiculous because it's a 210 horsepower bike. Yeah. It's nuts.
But so I've capped out at 290.
Yeah.
So let's add, 170 Ks on that?
Yeah. And then be, you know, have a guy to your right, 5 feet ahead, have a guy 12 feet ahead on the left, and then there's a guy, in the middle. When you get all that stuff going on at that speed, like I said, if you're third or fourth in line and you don't initiate the brakes before they do, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You can't stop. I mean, because like I said, there's so much buffeting with the draft sucking you in, you can't be at the brakes at 100%. And you're asking for trouble, at that speed. Once you're, like I said, once you're over 340 Ks an hour, if something goes wrong, I mean, you got no escape,
Man. I did a lap on the back with Jack at the Bend, which is the fastest track in Australia. I think we did like 286 or 287 down the main straight.
You got on the back with Jack.
Bro, I didn't really have a choice. It's funny too. So
he had fun with that, I'm going to tell you.
Dude, so he literally says to me, he goes, I've got some videos on my phone, actually, I should show you after. But we get on, and so Ducati, it's when I was doing like the Ducati stuff. And they all know we're friends. And so I didn't know I was doing this ride until 10 minutes before. It was the biggest stitch up.
Yeah.
And then
because you can't say no in front of everybody.
I can't say no, yeah. I got like literally all my boys are there. We're filming to the week. Like there's no way out of it. And so I've got like I only have one kidney. I got some like blood pressure issues and stuff that like come as a result of that. Mm-hmm. And so they say, oh, you've got to go do this medical. And and I go in and I get my blood pressure done, but right before, and it's like 185 over.
Hypertension.
Like crazy, dude. And the chick's like, oh, I can't let you ride. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, it's fine. Like, I've got this thing. It's like, blah, blah, blah. I sort of talk my way into it.
Yeah.
But then I walk out and everyone's like just laughing at me like, you're fucked. Like, you're so fucked right now.
I mean, I like I said, I respect Jack a lot, but there's a couple people like him and Randy Momola, like I just not getting on the back with. Not happening.
Dude. So we like put the lids down and he goes, hey, I am fully prepared to crash as we rode out of pit lane, bro.
He would say that too.
Oh, and so we go out.
You're like having a conversation with Jesus at that point, like, oh my God.
Straight up, dude. Like, it was so gnarly. And so he did, and we went last. Mm-hmm. Why? Because all these other people had to get their ride, and if Jack crashed the bike, then they wouldn't be able to do the ride. So they did everyone else first. Everyone else didn't do the start straight. Yeah. Because they go pit lane, they come back
and they stop.
Lane, and then they stop, right? Yeah. We did 3 laps.
Oh, so you were rocking.
Bro. Like, we were doing 240 through one of the turns.
Yeah.
And we went deep. It's funny on the video. Like, we just come past everyone, and we couldn't go any faster. Like, the bike was wedged because obviously you can't tuck with like the 2 people.
Yeah, yeah.
We overshoot turn 1, like fully on like the dirt, like just almost on the white line on the outside of this turn. And there was a time, there was like this triple apex like right-hander, and my inside leg come off, hits the ground, rips my leg, like the bike, we're wheeling this thing, my legs up. And I was like, bro, this is
and he's laughing the whole time.
Pissing himself, dude. Yeah. And then, but we had one more moment where like we fully lost the front, and then he picked it back up. And I've never in my life experienced, and when you said like having a conversation with Jesus, like,
you were halfway there.
Bro, I reckon a lap and a bit in, maybe it was like after the start straight, I think probably by turn 3 on the second lap, I was like, whatever.
It's probably, you're like,
whatever. I don't care. I'm holding on. And dude, I've had the gnarliest arm pump I've ever had in my life trying to fucking hang on.
I wish they had a heart rate monitor on you and a blood pressure while you were on the bike.
I was tripping. Yeah. So I can't, that was that speed.
Yeah.
And it was the
GP, like a one rider on a GP bike, it's way faster than that.
But that's what I can't believe. Yeah. Like I couldn't believe where we got to in that. And I would say to people, like when I describe it, because it's phenomenal. Like and especially with Jack sending it like that, and the feeling was like falling off an office chair. You know, when you lean back and you just lose gravity. Yeah. Like you're gone. That's what every single turn felt like.
And that's half of what, because remember, they're dragging elbows and dragging everything. And with you, he's probably barely dragging a knee.
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't. And
I would never do it. I would never get on the back of a bike with somebody. Just not going to happen.
So many people have told me
I
that.
wouldn't. And not even, I mean, definitely not Jack, because, I mean, I know Jack a little bit. He's cool, but he's crazy. And there's just, I would never do that, you know. And that goes back to the plane thing, or it's like even if someone's out on a jet ski, you want to ride on the back? Hell no. No, not doing it.
I ain't having it. But the point is just what more a GP bike is getting than what I experienced is I couldn't fathom what I experienced, and I can't fathom there being 170 kilometers left to go on a straightaway.
What was the lap time y'all were probably doing?
Actually, I could look it up for you.
Like 2 minutes or a minute.
It'd be something around that.
Yeah, I mean, a GP bike, they're probably 15 seconds a lap quicker than what y'all were doing. It's
just not like and it was the grip through. It wasn't the speed down the straights, because I could see a person getting used to that speed. And by the third time we went down the straight, like that was kind of the chill part of the lap.
Well, that's when you're recovering. I mean, and when you're in that zone and that level, I mean, when you're doing 205 or something, 210, you're still glancing at pit board. You're still making some adjustments with, you get used to it. I mean, and then you leave that weekend and you're driving the rent-a-car and you look down and you're driving 100 and it's like, oh shit, I feel like I'm driving 50. You just get used to it, and it's hard to describe.
But I can't ever see, like I went and did the Phillip Island track day after that. That's
experience. A good track.
Fuck, it was cool.
Yeah, going into turn one, you're just looking at the ocean, then it drops down. It was,
dude. For me, going under this, like I started rolling off the throttle at the Welcome to Melbourne sign, and you've got so much more.
Oh, you're going way down there. I remember it was raining, and it was like 2010 or 11 or something. Going into turn one, and I mean, I'm on a hot lap, like rolling in the rain. And, I brake back 2 gears and then I tipped it in and you're, going into turn one, you're still rolling really fast. And I tipped it in and the bike just started, the rear started coming around and I was like, oh shit. And I just picked up the bike, and kind of stood up with the slide. And I mean, I rode the damn white line all the way around. And that's one of those corners, like if you crash and you hit that wet grass, you're going to the ocean. Yeah. I mean, you're going back across the track and you're going to keep going. So it was scary as hell doing that.
But I just don't know. The thing that I really took away was, how do you find that line? Like for me to feel the first time we really dipped into a turn and the way, the aggressiveness from braking, and it's just the bike gets dumped. Like you're dumping that thing as hard as you, and it's like, how do you find that the first time? How is that a thing that is possible?
It it takes a lot of years, but I mean, it's in the same time, it is that. It's when you get to that level, you have so much feeling with the bike, and because you're riding it on the edge where you feel that edge all the time, so you can feel it, going into a turn, you're pushing the front, you pick up the throttle, the rear kind of just barely steps out. You can kind of manipulate the bike a little bit through the turn, and you're just on that line, of traction. And the faster you're going, I mean, obviously you want to be on a good bike and stuff, but that's all the feel right there, because you're feeling all the little micro slides because you're just on that absolute limit. So when you're there, I mean, you have a lot of feeling, and you kind of, where you're at, but it's, takes a lot of time. And again, like now, if I go ride right now, I'm not slow by any means, but I'm in a pace that there isn't much feeling because I'm not sliding the bike at all. Kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, some a little bit, but you know what I mean. I'm not like getting the front to push and all that kind of stuff, and you kind of have less feel at that speed. Yeah. So it's just something that you're spending. Like I tell people, I mean, that's our office. You're doing it every day, or that's what you're doing. It's repetitive, and you can get back to that level, really quick. But then when you back out of it for years, like I have, you realize that just how locked in, in those years, in that moment you are, with the bike and stuff. I mean, it takes a lot of time to get there.
What was the best bike you ever rode?
Well, I mean, that's, the GP bikes obviously were probably the quickest.
But the one you had the most feeling with?
Probably my 2007 and 8 Superbike, my Suzuki's.
Was that a Suzuki? Yeah.
Yeah, and then went to Yamaha in 09. The bike, obviously, a lot of people know now. At the time, they were like, "Oh, it's the bike," and I was like, "Well, y'all said that about the Suzuki," and it really wasn't. It had a great front end. I could feel everything on it, so I could ride around a lot of problems too with the rear end because I knew where the front was. I was a hard breaker, so I could.
So you were leaning on that front, and
yeah.
if you had front, you could kind of
Yeah, but like if I had my Suzuki for 09, or if I had that Ducati, like we would have done better. Yamaha, that was one of my favorite bikes just because the feeling I had on it with the front end. But when you look at, the traction, the side grip that it had, the wheelbase we had to run in it, it wheelied a lot. It did stoppies into the corners a lot because it was really short because we were, going for a lot of grip. And, it was just, it was a hard bike to ride, and a lot of people that rode it, they were just kind of like, wow. This thing's heavy left to right because I had a cross-plane crankshaft. Just all the centrifugal force, it was heavier, and I liked it. I liked it a lot, but probably, my 2007, 2008 Superbike.
Yeah. And when you're on that bike on its best day, are you just fully, like, in the zone is like the term that people use, but like, yeah. I just, from being and doing that lap with Jack and I could just imagine when that felt normal, how incredible of a feeling that must be. Because like it was incredible to me, but I was shitting my pants the entire time. But like I said, when I kind of let go of that and just was like, well, I'm on here now. If we crash, we crash. I got two more laps. Like I'm just going to enjoy this thing. And when I did let go, fuck, what a like it was incredible. So I imagine when you're the dude doing the riding, you've got that feeling, everything's working. That just must feel amazing. Yeah,
2005 was my first year on Superbike. And I beat Matt one time because his bike broke. And that was my first Superbike win. But besides that, I was pretty much second most of the races, kind of 10 seconds back. Usually had second pretty comfortable. Sometimes I was fighting for third, but pretty much second place.
It was like you two.
Yeah. And I had a good feeling with the bike, but it wasn't just super great. But I definitely, things were good on it. But I didn't have the feeling that, I felt, like I said, I could run Matt's pace. And then we changed the fork specs or got a new set of forks in the off season. I went out on them and basically got straight down to the lap record. And I came in and I was like, if I have this feeling with the bike at 9 out of 10 tracks, we can win the championship. I felt it. It like clicked. I was able to, because also like if you're riding a Superbike and you're riding it, you're more of a mid-level guy and you get on a Superbike and it's set up the way that we set our bikes up, you're not going to be fast on it. You're not going to like it. It's not going to turn good. It's going to be stiff as hell. But people think that they're going to get on it and just go faster. It's like, no, you have to push those things to make them work. And that fork change allowed me to do that. And then we won that title in 06 and then 07. Same thing. The feel I had with those bikes, and me and Matt at that time, we did a really good job developing the bike, a really good job. He had kind of been doing it a couple years before me. And then I came into the team when I was 18, was riding Formula Extreme. So I was kind of helping with some of the development. And then in 06 and 07 and 08, it was kind of looked at as the two-horse show, for a little bit. I think in 2007 and 8, I think we won every race between me or him. But, and as much as the rivalry was and some dislike at that time and just the cutthroat, part of racing, when it would come to testing or little kind of conversations, we were making the bike better. And we were not helping each other, but we were
pushing each other.
We were pushing each other, but then we were also like, hey, what'd you feel on this part? It was shit, wasn't it? Or, this, and we were getting that bike better and better. And then, everybody was like, oh, they're winning because it's the Suzukis and all that kind of stuff. And then again, we went over to 09, and that's when we didn't know what the tracks, didn't know the bikes. And we were, there. And it was like, guys, we worked our ass off.
Yeah.
We really did. Me and him testing practices. It was like if you were in a practice, I would see some of the other factory guys, they're on their cool off lap or they're going to come into the pits. they come out of the corner, do a wheelie, waving to the crowd or whatever, where our cool-off laps were a second off the pace because we were getting back to the pits, trying to make a change because we only had a 45-minute session. And that's how, it was almost like I would see, again, some factory racer kind of look back, see me coming, and you could tell that they were like, okay, we'll get out of the way.
Yeah, he's working still.
Yeah, because it was just, I didn't mess around like that. If somebody wanted to follow me, kind of like Marquez does, I was like, all right, hold on.
Yeah.
And I just kind of went about the business like that. And that's where, for the relationship we had, the rivalry we had, we worked really good together on making that bike. I mean, it was awesome. It was just so refined,
Do you think that rivalry with Matt pushed you to be a better rider?
100%. Yeah. No, there's no doubt. I mean, I came into the team and he was Matt. He had won everything, and he had got beat by Nicky kind of one year, but that was when he was on a 750. Nick was on RC51. There was a pretty big gap in that, but nobody had ever beat him on the same motorcycle. I mean, it hadn't been done. And he had already won 6 titles, So when I came in, he knew I was, being groomed to be the next one and all the stuff. So it started from the moment I came into the team. When I was 18, just kind of remarks. And if you know Matt, you know how it was. So it started like that.
I think that's a bit of Aussie culture.
Yeah, I mean, could be. And he, it was a different setup. I had my family kind of supporting me. I was a kid. I was this. And he was the one from Australia, didn't have really shit behind him. Mm-hmm. And he was looking at it like he had a chip on his shoulder, for sure. And I get it, but the rivalry, yes. I mean, when it came to training and it came to pushing myself in every other way, there's no doubt, that racing him, it prepared me going over for 2009. Because like when I went over for 2009, people are like, how are you, how's it going to be? And I was like, well, I'm not racing Matt, so it's got to be easier.
Yeah.
And that's the way I looked at it. And he was a great rider. I mean, he's one of the only rider, to when I was on a Superbike and I felt like I was on. He rode away from me not by much, but he was faster. That was the couple days you go back to the 18-wheeler and you're like, shit. Mm-hmm. I didn't make mistakes. I felt good on the bike. I rode good, and he rode away from me. And I did that to him too. And I know he'd never felt that from the same bike. And it was, it was, and I had, and at that point too, it was usually I hadn't been beat by my teammate. Or, I didn't have a faster teammate. And so seeing his level and just catching it and seeing how he went about testing and how just scientific and laps and just seriousness and all that stuff, that made me to lock into that because the rivalry had gotten to the point where I was like, I'm gonna beat his ass, on the track. It's just, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. And, he's, I always say too that maybe one of the championships would have went to him, if he wouldn't have been that person, because he put me in a place where it was like, because 2007 we go to the last race, and it was the point situation was if he got pole position and got the extra point, he could finish second in the race and win the title. And then if I got the pole point, it didn't even, because if you led the most laps, you got a point. So if I got the pole position, it didn't matter. He could lead the most laps, but if I won the race, I won the title. So I got the pole position, and I put it in place where it was a winner take all at the end of 2007 at Laguna. And we get going, and that was one of the races because we had some clutch issues where a lot of the races during the year, he would get away earlier, I got away earlier, and then you just couldn't, once there's 3.5 second gap to what we were doing, you're not catching.
At that level, yeah.
Yeah, so, we got rolling, and we're right, I'm on his ass. And Laguna was a track that I kind of had his number a little bit more than he did on mine, and Atlanta and Virginia, he kind of was the same way, and then everywhere else we were pretty even. And I was right on him, and we were rolling. And the pace that he was setting was fast. I mean, it was faster than he had ever gone there, and he was riding good.
Just hungry, eh?
Yeah, and again, I was 0.1, 0.2 behind him the entire time. He could hear my bike. And then I made a little bit of a mistake, and he got like half a second on me. And then it went 0.75, 0.9, and it got to a second, almost 1.1. And it was kind of the only time in my career where I was like, we've raced all these races, all year long, and it comes down to this. I was like, I'm not going to finish second. I'm either going to win it or I'm going to crash.
And you didn't have to win the title.
No, I did. It was whoever
so
won
it was
the race.
Yeah.
And I was going down the front straightaway, and I remember I told myself that, and I was like, I've got to go, and just for whatever reason, I got back into a zone, and I was like 0.4 a lap quicker. So, it was one of those things where he got to a second, and I think he was almost realizing like he broke me. Because right when you get to that second 1.2, that rubber band pops, and the guy in second's like, okay, I ain't got it.
It's not like a outbreak, run it in kind of scenario. It's like you have to then catch up on lap times. You can't.
Because he's got the gap where he doesn't have to protect anything.
Yeah.
So he's just ultimate fast lap times. And at that point, so, I got rolling. I think, I knocked like 0.4 a lap off of what I was doing. And it kind of reversed on him because he saw that gap build, and then it went 0.6, 0.2, 0.0, and I was there. So he was like, I knew in his head, he was like, shit, he's coming, and passed him up into the corkscrew, put together 2 really, really good laps, and, got a couple seconds on him, and then ended up, the band popped, like we say, and kind of got it up to like 3.5, 4 seconds, and then just chilled, but no, I mean, racing, I always say it was hard racing. It was tough. There's a lot of stuff, that went on, within the team. But in the same time, it was a good rivalry, and it did put me in a better position, for a lot of my career, because it taught me the small things matter, the testing, all that. Because I wasn't always like the biggest tester. I loved riding, but it just made me get analytical about everything and just pay attention to everything, about the bike and the team situation, structuring it with how many tires we would have in this practice to this qualifying, and just looking at the whole picture. So yeah, it was big.
And what about the personal rivalry?
Oh, it was huge. Yeah, at that time.
Like in terms of the relationship and the personally how you felt towards him, how he felt towards you.
It was bad, if you were from the outside looking in, the way that it looked. But I also knew, in the times that me and him were kind of completely alone, like if we had to jump in a limo together to go to an autograph signing or something like that, he wasn't always that person, So I knew it, but I also knew that he's not afraid that when it comes to a press conference or something, like I had an appendix taken out, emergency appendix surgery, and I raced 9 days after. And finished second those weekends, and I even got pole position. I got the point for it. But, we're in the press conference, and he's like, and yeah, he's complaining, his stomach hurts, and, something. He's like, maybe I need to do that so I can get pole. I'm like, fucker, I have a bacterial infection from a seeping appendix. They just removed it, and it ain't it. But that's he would do all that stuff. So, he wasn't always right either, but it made for a great ride. Since there was basically both of us were winning the race. It wasn't really, nobody else was kind of in the race at that point. It made it where it was interesting because there was such a rivalry for sure.
But rivalries make sport.
Oh yeah. Well, even my crew chief, he's known as kind of do not mess with him, and so the crew chief and Matt's crew chief, and it was just, I mean, like Houseworth, I've seen him, get mad at somebody at a bar, break a beer bottle, grab the glass, and eat it.
Jesus.
My crew chief. And his nickname's House. His last name's Houseworth. He's a big dude.
Yeah.
So that was always what my comfort was, is I was like, nobody's going to mess with me. Like there was one time I kind of ran into somebody or they got in my way in qualifying, and it was my mistake. I mean, I came up, I kind of hit him and didn't knock him down, but knocked him offline a little bit. And I came in, I was like, Tom, might have somebody coming over pretty soon that's pissed off. And right then a dude kind of chopped my front in the pits and stopped right there and started kind of point my finger. Tom grabbed him off his bike and picked him up and took him and set him on the other side of pit wall. And he was like, do not do this right now. And I was like, oh my God.
My G.
Yeah, my God.
Oh, that's so good. I heard back, I can't remember when it was, but someone was saying, or it's just like kind of one of those rumors that goes around Australia that Matt pretty much sent Suzuki broke for those years.
What's that?
That Matt pretty much sent Suzuki broke those years because of like just how much money that they were paying out in bonuses.
Yeah, I think
both of you
did. Yeah. And to be fair too, you know, like Aaron Yates and Tommy Hayden, they were on the team, and they were getting paid, you know, not like me and Matt, but when you put them all three together, it was kind of like, you know, I know Matt was low $2 million, you know, for a couple of years, and I know I was kind of in the same way for a couple of years, and then you have someone like a Tommy Hayden that's probably getting, you know, $800,000 or $600,000, something like that. It's a lot of money, you know. And then obviously when the economy, we were, you know, getting that 06, 7, and 8 kind of years, and then the economy hit, you know, and it changed everything. But yeah, we were lucky. I mean, but I was able to build a really good team atmosphere with me because, you know, the bonus winnings and stuff like that. I remember, you know, when we got to the championship, the year that we won the 07 double titles, Super Stock and Superbike. You know, we went, and I would always kind of bonus the guys, you know, after the races, but there was, you know, we showed up to the banquet, you know, and I think I gave each member, you know, a check for $25,000, and I gave my crew chief a check for like $75,000. So I mean, over the year I'd paid a couple $100,000, you know, just in you know, the team and all the stuff, because the stuff they do, I mean, they're putting in so much more work than what I'm doing. But you know, it's yeah. So our whole team vibe was great. I mean, those were my favorite years of racing, even with the rivalry and even the way it was hectic. I mean, I enjoyed those years, you know, the most.
Yeah, because I'm sure that you could. You can kind of like appreciate what a rivalry does for you.
Yeah.
You know, like when you have guys like you think about, I don't know, like a Casey and a Valentino. Like, do you get that Casey Stoner without that Valentino?
Yeah.
You know, do you get this Ben Spies without that Matt Mladin?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like...
No, I mean, it definitely, you know, made me, you know, be a little bit more ruthless in that way and just kind of doing everything you can do to win. And sometimes, you know, you get mad and you ride out of anger kind of thing with whatever's going on. But there's no doubt, you know, again, the fans liked it. It was good for racing. And it's always good to have a rivalry. And that's going back to MotoGP when you brought up that question of how it is now. And that's the one thing I do think it lacks a little bit. You know, and I'm not because I'm friends with a couple of the guys and I respect all those dudes. I mean, they're the best in the world and, you know, they're awesome. But in the same time, you know, turn one on the checkered flag lap, sometimes you'll see like the top four pull over and they're like giving each other hugs and stuff. And I just think, you know, at that level, it's so, I don't know how to describe it, but all the guys are kind of like that A personality, like they're the alphas type deal. Yeah. And it's like, you know, I don't want guys out there hating each other, but it's good to have that battle, you know, and a little bit, not going against each other, but just a little bit more aggressiveness, you know, than sometimes. But if the guys get along too, that's great. Because back when I was in MotoGP, there was a lot more, you know, people were in their lanes and they didn't really, and now it's a lot different, which I always liked. And I was the type that I could have been great friends with people and I can race them hard. You know, that's not going to change how it is, but you know, that's the only thing I've noticed, and I know other people have kind of said it. And again, I'm not hating on them because the dudes that are finished on the podium, I'm fans of them. Yeah. But I feel like it's lacking, you know, a couple rivalries, different things that could be. But
no, man, I completely agree. Like when you know, Jack's the only dude that'll talk a bit of shit these days.
Him and Crutchlow, you know, they don't care. They're going to pretty much say it how it is.
Yeah, but, I mean, there's just no... And I know Jack likes all those dudes. I know Jack's friends with all of them. Yeah. But I think it's kind of like... It's such a weird little club now, you know? Like, they're all living in Andorra. They're all cycling past each other. There's only a few cafe... Like,
well, you see them like they go super moto train and they're all together. Yeah. You know? And again, that's... I mean, that's...
It's cool.
Yeah, yeah. But when you get to the racetrack, it's kind of like... I just always kind of felt or looked at it like, you know, and when you're at the top of that series and you're top of the, you know, all that stuff. It's like you're a gladiator. Like, y'all are going to do battle, you know, when you think about how fast it is and how intense racing is, that's the way I looked at it, you know.
And I think from like a business perspective too, I mean, they're all getting paid a bunch of money, so it's like, do they really give a fuck? But, you know, I look at like Hayden Deegan, you know, and it's like,
but he's got that killer.
He's a dog.
Yeah.
Like, he is a little fucking dog.
Yeah.
And, you know, we just put out a podcast with them yesterday, and he's talking about, he's like, man, I love talking shit. He's like, I respect
but he does it in a way that, like, you can see that he's got that, I wouldn't call it arrogance, but he's got that.
He's the alpha dog.
He is. And, you know, he's young, and he's got all this following now with what he's been doing, rightly so. You know, so the way he's handling it too, I mean, you know, a couple times some interviews people be like, oh, that's a little too much. I think he's handling it, you know, in a really good way. And he's, you know, he's having to obviously mature fast because of where he's at in the spotlight. But his type of personality, how he goes about racing, that's what I like to see out of a racer. You know, and you want to, it's not that you want to be cocky about it and you want to be a clean rider, but it's like Cooper Webb.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
If you pass him, he's coming back. He might not be able to sustain the pace. You might get him back, but he's not settling ever. I mean, you can see that with Cooper. As soon as he gets past, dude is looking the next corner or the corner after that rhythm. So he's trying to get back by. He's a racer, and that's how Hayden is. That's what I see, you know, in him. And I'm not saying the other guys like Chase, because they're wicked fast, but that you see a little bit more dog in Hayden. You know, it's like I'm coming.
And I think I got the vibe from talking to him that he understands like the game theory that you know, you can win, like I said, you can win races by the way that you walk to the truck. You can win races by the way that you say hello. You can call your teammate buddy. Yeah. You know, like there's little like, hey buddy, like that's condescending as shit. You know what I mean? So it's like you can play those little games.
Oh, he's already set the stage where
for sure,
when he rolls up to the starting line and people look over, it's kind of like, all right, we know what we're getting with him. Yeah. You know, which is everything. Yeah. And that's what I like to see in a racer. I mean, because you only get to do it one time. You know, you can't go back in the window. In the grand scheme of things, in motocross, you know, it's from like 16, 17 to, you know, they're starting to get out of their prime when they're 30, you know. I mean, you can still do it, you know, obviously, but you're in your prime at like the 22 to 26 mark kind of thing. And it goes by quick and you ain't going to do it again. Yeah. You know, so it's like, I was just always the type, like, put everything into it. And the way Hayden's doing it, you know, I respect it. You know, he's doing a good job.
Yeah, and I think the same with the MotoGP stuff. Like, do I really want to see everybody being hugging and friends and like a little boys club? You know, like you had Sete Gibernau and Valentino. Like, dude,
Rossi, and Max and Valle, Biaggi and Valle, like those were. It made it interesting.
Made the sport though. Like that's the stuff that the foundation of
Kevin Swan's Wayne Rainey. That American rivalry over there. So. Again, you don't want it to get too much, but I think it's very good for the sport. The fans like it. It's good.
I hope, you know, having a guy like Pedro Acosta come in, or, you know, it's just like a little bit of fresh blood kind of like fires everybody up. You know, I think.
And he's a bit of a dog too. I mean, he's like, just when you see him ride and what he's accomplished already, I mean, he's, like I said, I think he's got that killer instinct when it comes to winning.
Yeah. Yeah, and it'd be cool to see, you know, like Jakey Dixon, like he's obviously, like he's a cool motherfucker too. Yeah. Like he's got a lot. I don't know that everyone agrees with his style. Like he's pretty, you know, he takes it to
He wears his heart on his sleeve, you know, but in the same time, I did that a little bit. Casey was that type too. And it makes you, you know, sometimes dig deeper, right? You know, but in the same time, sometimes it comes across in that way, but that's just...
But I think you just need to walk the line between like sport and entertainment. Yeah. You know, like there's a pretty big gray area.
And well, like Valentino was really good about that, I think. Man. Like as in, I think there's a lot of races in the past that he could have won by a bigger margin, but he understood the show. and that's a lot of respect for him, because
that's high level.
Yeah, because I really think, I'm positive about that. Back in, it's hard to say, the exact years, but early 2000s to kind of 2000, basically when Casey and Jorge arrived, that's when it changed.
Yeah.
Before that,
it was all hands on deck then.
Yeah. And I think before then, he could play a little bit, and he understood, and he's always understood the show, and everything that goes with it, his colors, everything, so that was a big thing.
Yeah. So 2013, you have like a pretty gnarly shoulder injury. You've had some just crazy injuries.
Yeah. My shoulder, this thing pops in and out pretty much.
So just done.
Yeah.
But you retire basically, like there's a kind of famous incident where you just wedged and your shoulder comes out, you can't roll off the throttle, and then you're just like, sorry guys, I can't.
So at Mugello, there's a chicane that goes to the last turn, and I had been on and off the bike already that year because my shoulder was obviously messed up. I tried to come back. I think that was my second time coming back, because I came back for the first race, was having big issues with it. I was honestly like 60%, in that year, without a doubt. Tried to do Qatar, they're sitting there giving me shots every day to try to numb it, and my shoulder's just black from all the shots and just trying to get through it. And then I go back home and I don't go to the next couple races, doing more rehab, and then I go back to Mugello, and I'm coming out of a turn, and I have a slide, kind of going out to the paint. And I hit the paint where it's got more traction, and the thing kind of twisted up in a couple knots, but nothing that I would say, it was not a big deal. But it pulled my shoulder out, and I was kind of just hung wide open.
Throttle hand.
And you've got a short straight to the last turn. And I went in, I passed my brake marker by 50 meters. And at that level, when you miss a brake marker by that much, you're in way hot.
Yeah,
you're going off the track. Yeah. Luckily, I got through the gravel trap, didn't hit the wall, got it turned. Came into the pits, and that scared the shit out of me, because I didn't have any control of a bike that's got 275 horsepower, And the bigger thing that we were looking at was that if that would have been the first lap of a race, I'd have taken out a few people, and it would have been bad. So I pulled off the bike again, went home, was doing rehab again, and then I tried to go back and ride at Indy. And when I was riding the bike, I was in pain. I wasn't able to ride it like I wanted to, just not comfortable. And coming out of pit lane, the way the Yamaha used to work is when the pit lane limiter was on and you turned it off, the electronics were fully running. TC, wheelie control, everything. With the Ducati, when you had to go to second gear for it to turn on.
Yeah.
And the way pit lane was at Indy, the first 3 turns were all first gear. So when I came out, out of the deal, it was like midway through the session, went back out. And again, it was my fault because I hadn't been on that bike that much. I really hadn't ridden it, but just a test and partially 2 weekends kind of thing. So, I go there and I come out of, turn 3, and I go to get on the throttle, and the thing was like full power, no electronics, and it, just spit me. And it separated this shoulder. It was a grade 5 separation of this one. My right one, I've had 4 separations, and 3 were grade 5. And I was already having issues with it again. So, when that happened with Indy, with all the stuff I was going through, there was one surgery I could have possibly done to get it better, but there was a good chance too that it would be painful and have some issues with it. So when I left Indy, I just had double shoulder surgery at the same time, and I said, I'm out. It was one of those things, like I needed a lot of time off because my shoulder started feeling better, but I still have huge issues with it, but it started feeling better, a couple years later. And it was an injury that took, a long time to heal in a good place, but it's not, I would say that it's 75, 80% normal. It's just I'm weak in that side. You can see like I have some muscle atrophy on that side, and it's hella loose. So it's just it sucks that in the last kind of year, because the season before I had some just bad luck stuff with Yamaha. The bike broke a lot, had some issues with it, wasn't a great year, and then, went to Ducati. And then, like I said, I got hurt at the end of 2012, and I had the huge surgery done where they're cutting bones, and I had cadaver tendons put in and a bunch of stuff. And I needed a lot more time, and I tried to rush it back, and it was not a good thing. And, just put me in that place, and it wasn't easy to walk away, but it was just like, man, I've got so much stuff stacked against me right now. And that was it. But I just, I tell people I was upset for a while. There's no doubt when you're a racer and you're just, wanting to do that and it's kind of taken away from you, it's not easy, but we had so much, success in the beginning and a lot of my career. I mean, I can't be upset about it. I wanted to race a couple more years for sure, but a lot worse can happen, so it is what it is.
Yeah, I think so many dudes struggle when they retire just on their own accord, let alone to have it basically just ripped out of your hands, literally.
Well, me and Casey talk about this, and I talk about it with a few riders too. Is I was even talking with my dad about it because we were watching some racing and it just got brought up, and you don't think about it, and this is why I said you do. It's every day, it's normal for you, but you don't really think about it. But a lot of your life, up until you retire, you're riding at an edge and at a level that, again, you're going 150 mile an hour through a turn, you're kind of losing the front, you're sliding the rear, you're touching people, and it's all normal then. But it's not normal for a brain to be at that level for that long of doing stuff. I don't think so. It's not normal, so what it does to you and all the stuff, who knows, but when you retire and the lights go out, as I kind of say, like you're not getting the green light anymore, it's you just realize that, you're a bit different, and it's not that you're not more special than anybody, but you're a bit different because you've been doing this in a certain way for so long that is such an extreme thing. It's like, some people, and I didn't have any like big troubles, but it wasn't easy, and you talk with Casey, you talk with people that are kind of at that level or up at the, where they're the analytical person, or they were good at it, but they were so into it when it stops. I mean, it's, it's a big difference. It's just kind of like, wow, you start looking around and it's like, this is an adjustment, you know?
Yeah, and I think especially in Casey's case, like, did you hear the podcast with him?
A little bit.
Where he spoke a lot about like the anxiety and stuff that he had that no one really even knew about. But you think about, so dude, this Garmin, like I wear this pretty much all the time for the last few years, and which sucks because I've got other watches that I fucking love. Yeah, but I just don't. I'm like, I can't let go. I'm like, do I make this thing an ankle monitor or something? But when you learn, like, the stress reading on this is crazy. Like, you would have worn them for, like, with training and stuff, I'm sure, back in the day. But when you start to see stress, like the physical stress on your body, and that's like the fight or flight response that you're in, right? Yeah. You just sitting at a desk, and you're redlining, you're at like 80, 95 stress, and that's like anxiety, and it's like your body's kind of, for whatever reason, like whatever you're thinking about or whatever you've got going on, like you're sitting still, but you're in that kind of fight or flight response. But then you think, and when you get this watch and then you start noticing it, you're like, shit, I need to start, I need to really be mindful of this. And then over time, like, I've been able to drop it down like crazy, just my normal state now. I feel like by knowing that, you've got way more control over it, right? Yeah. So then you think about what you did for your whole life, and the stress on your
it seems normal to you, but it's not. No.
The level that your nervous system is operating at, and the flight or fight response, the fear response, the anxiety, dude, so you're just bottoming yourself out.
This is a good way to look at it too, is, when it's raining and you're doing a rain race, physically it's really easy, because you can't ride. I mean, you're only riding what you can do in the grip level. So when you're in that type of shape and you're riding that much, through the year, physically it's just nothing, to do a wet race. But when you do a wet race and you're at dinner Sunday night you're mentally fried.
Yeah.
And your body's fine, but it's like it shows how much focus you're doing for that 40 minutes. I know you do like a 20-minute practice session in the morning, but the races say 42 minutes. But you are so focused. It was crazy to see how that would work. Like I said, you'd just be Sunday night, just like emotionally, mentally, you were way more drawn down than if the race was in the dry and you weren't thinking like that. You were just kind of, everything was going. So there's two different ways to look at it, but that always surprised me. And a lot of people, they say the same thing if they're at the top level. I mean, riding in a real hard rain race, mentally, you're cooked. Yeah. I mean, you're done.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And so what helped through retirement? You know, like what was the stuff that kind of, I guess, took that edge off the sting out of it in a sense? Is it just time? Like you just kind of slowly adjust to... Yeah. Because you're sort of like... It's not the same as like someone that's been in the services, but like it sort of is in a sense. And I think it's also similar in the sense that... relatability, like who can you relate to? Casey, Matt, there's not many humans that can know and experience the things that you have in your life.
And when you talk about it, you're always trying to like, it's not that like anybody's any more special than somebody,
or that
but
it was hard and bad and poor me, but it's like you just the relatability to a normal person is not the same.
No, that's exactly what it is. And I mean, like I said, for first couple of years, you're trying to figure out things. You know, luckily, I have a great wife, and we had kids, and you know, through that, you know, and just I've got horses out on my land, and being around horses and stuff like that always helps people that kind of are going through that type of stuff. I mean, it's pretty much proven, and those kinds of things, helped out, but also just realizing it and knowing it. And kind of being able to step back and be like, okay, that was, I know it did these things, and it kind of, you suffer from it a little bit in this way or that way. And you just kind of learn to deal with it. But it's also, it's not easy, because it's just, you're wired, that way.
Yeah. And then last year you make it into the AMA Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. How does that give, I guess, like a bit of a bookend to a career in a sense, where you can like, it really closes the chapter and you're just like, man, like I really did this.
Yeah. I mean, it's, just like when they, kind of making the press releases of the new Ducati team with the Ray Halls and all that stuff. And you kind of, they introduce you as, the 5-time AMA champ, MotoGP champion, GP winner, Hall of Fame, whatever. And then you realize it's like, damn, I did do something, because I always looked at someone like Bayliss or Troy Corse or Noriyuki Haga, the guy that I battled with the title for. I was fans of them. I never thought like I was on their level. But when I look back at like their fans, like I understand, but I never felt like that. And I never put myself like, that's where I am, relatable to things. So yeah, no, I mean, it's cool. And with the way I am, I mean, I was living so much kind of in the moment, tunnel vision, that I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy, the accolades and stuff like that, but you're always looking the next day and the next year and planning and going about it. So that's the one thing in the last kind of 5 years I've been able to reflect more on the past. And, even some of the days where people were like, oh, are you even enjoying living in Lake Como and doing all this stuff? Life experiences, it was great. And you do look back and it makes you happy and all that kind of stuff. But when, at least for me, when I was in that zone and just doing that stuff, that's how I had to be. And again, if for whatever reason, if I was able to go back to racing, I probably would be like that again. Just because it's like, if I'm going into something and it's kind of war in that way, like you're racing people or whatever, I've got to go to that level where it puts me in the best place to win or be competitive. And not that being nice doesn't make it work, but it's just, I got to simplify things a lot, and just be super dedicated to it. Some do that. Some are able to, like I said, balance it more and, be the fan person or the ambassador to racing. And we have to have those people, but it's not for everybody either.
Man, it's not for most people. Like you can think about, it's one thing I always say, and I even said it to Hayden on the podcast, is like, hey, like people say that they want to be this guy, like the guy that.
But when you're winning, and then everybody's looking at you too, like you got to keep winning or you got to keep this up. I mean, it's a ton of pressure, And I never really looked at it so much like that, but you feel it, because if you're winning kind of consistently or, all that stuff, that's what you have to be doing, So if you're not, it's tough, and you just know that, you've got a lot of fans behind you and they're kind of expecting that. So, I mean, that type of pressure builds where I think that some people don't understand it that haven't been in that position. Even a lot of racers that were pretty good at it. Like if they're not,
they never had that. Yeah.
And I'm not. I mean, again, there's many other people that did it, and I'm not talking crap about them. But it's just if you're at that level, there's different. People expect different things. People, expect you to be something when it's like, hey, I'm trying the hardest I can just to get this part done. I don't have time for that stuff right now. So that's how I was with it.
Well, I think too, like sometimes you like when you want to be the guy like a Rossi or like a Deegan type character or like it's really hard to, it's like you there's a caricature of yourself that you're playing, right? And like I even feel it with this. Like I do my absolute best. Like we talked in and out of this. Like I try to be myself, but you're presenting a face to the world. Like people have seen this version of me for like hundreds of shows now. And you end up being this person in this role, and then you get known in public, and then you go to a Supercross race, and then you're this guy to those people that know you as and if you don't, like, the further away that character is from your actual personality or how you act in real life, like, I think that it's very hard for people to find a line that they can walk. And, like, a guy like Valley did it amazing.
No, I mean, that's, No, and I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't walk that line that well.
That's a big project.
And my whole thing was just, man, I was like, I wish some of the people that are criticizing, they just could open, it's kind of like the extrovert to introvert thing. It's like, hey, I get that you're an extrovert, and that's great, but it's not me. But I think the extroverts, they always have a hard time looking at introverts, and they're like, why are you like that? I mean, people are different, and trust me, would I rather have been an extrovert that raced motorcycles? Yeah, it would have been a lot easier. Would have been, you would have got what you wanted and all the stuff, but that's not me. But then sometimes people go against that because they feel like you should be certain things, and it's like, not everybody wants the fame. Like a lot of people, they just want to win against the racers, and that's what the first thing's about. It's the race. It's not anything else. And people are just different. But, some people have a hard time understanding people too.
Well, I think a lot of people, like, when you'd say, I don't want the fame, I don't want this, everyone just calls bullshit. Like, immediately,
No.
Because to the person
I mean, if I get in front of a big group of people, even just the announcement yesterday, like, I'm the type of guy, like, a voice kind of can start shaking a little bit. Like, I don't want the eyes on me. I don't like it. Like, I'm really uncomfortable with it, and I always have been. So that's what, again, that's what was so hard with me on racing, was doing, like, the sponsor events and certain things like that, because I love the people that respect the racing part I did and that they're fans and stuff like that. But in the same time, they also got to understand that, like, hey, I'm that simple, like, I'm
a country boy that likes going fast,
and it's just, like I said, even school, like, if I had to get in front of the class and kind of talk about something, when I know that everybody's kind of looking, like, I don't like it. I kind of want to run that way. And, some people just don't get it.
And I just think that there's a level of, because people would kill to be in your position, right? And that's the kind of,
they're like, smile, just smile. I'm like, I'm thinking this other stuff, I'm like, it's just.
Well, you like Casey, for example. He's the person, genuine. I know him. I've known him for a very, very long time.
Oh, he does, like, when I won my first race, he was like, is this as excited you're gonna get? I'm like, bro, stop breaking my balls in the press conference right now.
But he genuinely, if he could have been two-time MotoGP champion without anyone ever taking a picture of, like, if he could have been the Stig
Yeah, he would have done
of MotoGP. He would have done that. But I think a lot of people, because of, I think the more typical sports star, and especially in team sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're more used to sports stars in team sports than we are in individual sports.
Yeah.
And I think that to thrive in a team environment, there's probably a lot of personal development that goes along your whole life. Like you played team sports, like you're in a football team, you're in a track team, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just get really used to that image of a sports star.
Yeah.
Whereas in our sport and in motorsport, it's very, very individual. And to do the sport and to practice, you're alone inside your helmet with your thoughts. So it's a very different type of person that can reach the top. Like that type of person, yeah, sure, they might reach the top in team sports, but it's way more of a social, and I think we're used to seeing that mold. So when you hear a guy like Casey be like, I would have done it without all, everyone's like, nah, come on, bro. Like, that's not how this shit works.
But it's true.
Yeah, it's genuinely true.
And just a lot of people, you know, they're just like, why is it, you know, why don't you like it? Or why is it hard to do? And it's kind of like, trust me, I wish it was not like that, but that's how I am. That's how I'm wired. And, you know, then you have some people that kind of go against it because they just don't understand you and they don't know how. And then it obviously gets a chip on your shoulder because you know that, you know, a third of the paddock is like, oh, he's arrogant and he's this and that. And it's like, no, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of humans, you know, of just that type of, you know, deal. And again, I've always said it, like I love the fans and all this stuff, but I even love the fans more when they understand, like, that's him.
Yeah.
You know, he's all about the racing. He's not all about this, but, you know, so.
Well, for a guy that doesn't like talking, you've just spoke for 3 hours and it's been amazing. And
see, that's the part, again, that people, like, if you were my crew all through my, you know, career, they saw a different side.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's how it was.
Well, I appreciate it, man. It's been fantastic to sit and do this. And,
thank you.
You know, talking at the Alps party breakfast now, I feel like we could just talk forever. So, I'm keen to come to Texas.
Awesome.
Keen to do some riding. I'll take you training. I'll take the girls. To do some jiu-jitsu.
I'll put you on a horse.
I've never ridden a horse.
See, we have 4 horses and I take care of them and everything, but I don't ride them.
Really?
Because they got a brain.
I don't know if I'm a horse guy,
Again, my girls ride them. I love being around them and just having them on the land. We always had rescue horses and stuff, but, you know, I want to kind of ride them so I can cruise the property, but that just not having a brain where I don't have direct control of it messes me up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm signing up to ride horses anytime soon. I mean, maybe it'd be cool to do it, but fuck, it just seems scary.
They're big animals. I just got stepped on one the day before I was flying out here, and I was like, I hope it didn't just break my damn toe. But that was good.
But they're so cool though. Like they're just beautiful animals.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
All right, well, I'll see you in Texas.
Yeah, awesome. I'll put you on a horse.
We're excited to announce the launch of our new membership site, gypsytales.com, packed with exclusive content and perks that you won't find anywhere else. This is your chance to become a part of the Gypsy Gang. And as a special bonus, if you sign up to an annual membership, you'll be entered into the draw to win our custom-built TC125. Gypsy Gang.